Hello everyone, and welcome to Fictional Vortex. So we are back with an interesting series on what if Naruto was a king of Star Trek universe. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Stardate 2254.010 Tory Prime System. Ship's log. Captain Sheila Tristan reporting. NCC 1371 USS Republic has entered the Tory Prime system to explore possible signs of life on Tory Prime IV. Previous exploration of this system by the destroyer NCC 528 USS Iblis was cancelled due to a main deflector dish malfunction caused by asteroid damage. The Republic has been ordered to follow up on the work already performed by the Iblis. The Federation heavy cruiser USS Republic was on a cadet training cruise under Captain Sheila Tristan. The captain was a graying but very fit and slim woman. She was also a stern taskmaster. As it was, Sheila was less than pleased that she had a group of trainees that were potentially heading into a danger zone. "ETA to planet Tory Prime IV, Lieutenant Finney?" asked Tristan. "We are about an hour away, ma'am," replied Ben Finney. "If we drop to sublight before we enter the asteroid field, we can clear the way with phasers and avoid the damage the USS Iblis sustained." Captain Tristan turned to the weapons station on the bridge. "Well, Ensign Kirk, it looks like you get to show us how good your aim is by shooting a bunch of rocks." Ensign James Tiberius Kirk's sweat dropped as his friend Finney grinned obnoxiously at him. "Yes, ma'am," Kirk answered crisply. "I'm a 21-year-old junior officer and my first live firing in action will be against space rubble," he thought morosely. A glint of determination sparked in his eyes. "I'll give those rocks hell." As Kirk practiced his trade by clearing a path for the plodding Republic, Captain Tristan turned to her chief science officer Tara Mafau. The statuesque Vulcan woman was hard at work reading the ship's sensor layouts. Her long black hair was in a conservative ponytail. "Anything of interest, Tara?" asked the captain. The USS Iblis reported an unknown power source on the surface of Tory Prime IV. Tara looked up from her station, revealing her intense onyx eyes. "I've confirmed the location of the energy source in the northern hemisphere. It seems to be a stable area. Most of the planet is ravaged by both gravity and electromagnetic storms." "Sounds inhospitable," said Tristan. "The reports were this world was supposed to be Class M." The Vulcan beauty nodded. "All evidence I am seeing points towards the planet being Class M in the distant past. I hypothesize that a massive asteroid impact rendered the world uninhabitable within the last 2,000 years. She looked back into her scanner. "The area surrounding the power source appears to be ruins created by intelligent life. It is also free of storms and gravimetric disturbances." "Are there any other calm spots in the storms, Commander Tara?" asked the captain. "There are none I can detect in the northern hemisphere," said the scientist. "I see numerous areas of ruins, but only the one place would be safe for an away team in the north. Everything else should be researched via probe at this point." "Keep searching and see what else we can tell from orbit," said the Captain Tristan. "Unless the energy source seems dangerous, we'll send an away team down to explore." Surface ruins. Tory Prime IV. Hours later, Chief Science Officer Tara led the away team down to the surface. They appeared in the shimmering energy of a transporter beam on the surface. With the Vulcan woman were Lieutenant Ben Finney and Ensign James Kirk, as well as Ensign Mira Cosworth from Security and Ensign Colette DeVry from Engineering. The area was a desolate wasteland mainly made of rocky soil. The only life forms there were algae and lichens, which were seen in clumps here and there. The atmosphere was of a Class M world and was breathable though thin. The sun shined dimly through the thick layers of dust and debris in orbit. It had the general ambiance of a long-forgotten tomb. Tara said, "Mr. Finney and Cosworth search the area for any signs of energy aside of the core of those ruins. DeVry and Kirk are with me." Before them were the crumbled remains of an ancient tower. It had a large entrance that allowed one to see inside. In its center was a raised stone dais that had a sphere of energy glowing above it. Tara led Kirk and DeVry down across the remains of a stone terrace that surrounded the tower. Many of the stones were crumbled and their footing was uneven. DeVry had her tricorder out and was scanning about. Kirk was about to move forward when DeVry called for a halt. "The stones on this side have a fissure underneath them, Kirk. They could collapse. Let me look for another way around." Kirk took a step back and said, "Commander Tara, the weight in this area seems to be getting heavier as we get closer to the tower." According to my readings, there is an artificial gravity field of approximately 2.8 that of Earth surrounding this structure. Judging that this monument is mostly intact, that probably was the normal gravity for this planet before it was devastated by asteroids. Tara's communicator beeped and she flipped it open. "Tara here," she answered curtly. "This is Lieutenant Finney, ma'am," crackled the communicator. "Cosworth and I circumnavigated the structure and there are no signs of any power sources or lines of any type leading to it. The tower is entirely self-contained." "Understood, Mr. Finney," replied Tara. "Meet us at the entrance to the structure and watch your footing." Tara out. She closed her communicator and said, "Let us proceed." After carefully traversing the stone terrace, both groups met at the entrance where they could clearly see the dais at the center on top of a flight of stone stairs. DeVry and Tara were both scanning the structure and the sphere of blue energy. DeVry said, "There are steel supports under the stone surfaces of the walls, ceiling and floor. It is structurally safe to go forward, but we need to be careful because many of the stones are loose." "What about that ball of energy?" asked Finney. "Is it a threat?" "It seems self-contained and stable according to my readings," said Tara. "We must remain cautious regardless." As they stepped inside the tower, an ethereal woman appeared at the top of the stairs. She was humanoid with pale skin and delicate facial features. She had long white hair and horns. Her most distinguishing feature was her pearl-like eyes and a red, third eye in the center of her forehead. The woman wore long, sweeping white robes. "I am Otsutsuki Kagaya and I welcome you to my garden," she said. Her appearance startled the group, but Tara answered smoothly as she could. "I am Lieutenant Commander Tara Mafau of the United Federation of Planets. Thank you for your kind welcome to your garden." Kagaya smiled wanly and said, "You are the first to come here since my children destroyed themselves in their foolishness." "Can you tell us what happened to this world?" asked Kirk. The Rabbit Goddess said, "Observe, in their minds the entire away team from the USS Republic saw a vision of the past. Otsutsuki Toneri was raining down asteroids on the planet and was threatening to crash the moon into the world and destroy all life. The 5 cages were arguing amongst themselves as to how to stop this threat. In the end, the Raikage used a weapon of mass destruction to end the threat of the moon, a massive chakra cannon hidden in Kumo. Instead of the moon being vaporized, it simply broke up and the remnants of the moon fell from the sky and devastated the planet in its entirety. Thousands of massive asteroids rendered the world incapable of supporting most life forms. What was left of the moon in orbit above the shattered planet formed a dense cloud of asteroids which did that much more damage by blocking out the sunlight. This destroyed even more life due to radical climate change. The gravity shift from the moon's destruction caused natural disasters all over the globe, and within 200 years all intelligent life was completely destroyed, which left the recently freed Otsutsuki Kagaya to weep as there was nothing in her garden left to protect. One by one the members of the away team succumbed to the horrible visions as the death of a civilization smashed through their mental defenses. In the end all were unconscious on the ground except for Tara, whose rigorous Vulcan mental discipline kept her conscious through the assault. She was kneeling and shaking all over from the horrors she'd seen. As the tears streamed down her face, Tara looked at her unconscious team and tried to call for an emergency beam out. That's when the young Vulcan woman saw Kagaya pick up the sphere of energy and bring it down the stairs. Kagaya held the orb as if it was something more precious than her own life. The Rabbit Goddess shrank the ball down to the size of a marble and showed it to the stunned Tara. "You will do nicely," said Kagaya. "I'll entrust you with this, Tara. You will know what to do when the time comes." Tara blacked out. An hour later Ensign James T. Kirk woke up and saw his teammates were all lying on the ground unconscious. There was no sign of the sphere of energy or the hauntingly beautiful woman named Kagaya. He grabbed his communicator and flipped it open. "This is Ensign Kirk to Republic. I have 5 for emergency beam out." "This is the Republic. We lost track of you for 67 minutes. Crackled the communicator. "Roger that, emergency beam out, Kirk. Stand by." Kirk felt the welcome feeling of the transporter beam surround him and sighed in relief. USS Republic, sickbay. The entire away team was suffering from mental trauma to some degree, but the most shocking by far was what had happened to their team leader Tara. Chief Medical Officer Dr. Nancy Solis finished her thorough examination of Tara and said, "I don't know any way to sugarcoat this, Tara. You are pregnant with a child that is a hybrid Vulcan and humanoid. The genetic markers indicate the child's non-Vulcan heritage is similar to a Terran human. The child is male and in perfect health with no signs of deformities whatsoever. Unless you decide to terminate the pregnancy, then you should give birth to a healthy baby boy in 10 months as per the norm of a typical Vulcan gestation period. Then Dr. Solace added, there should be no threat to your health at all, Terra. The Vulcan chief science officer now found herself in a situation that was difficult to gauge by anyone's standards. What will I do with this unborn child? She thought worriedly. Terra felt the most logical thing to do would be to confer with her husband Sovar and explain the circumstances she was in. No doubt Sovar and I can come to a logical solution to this issue. Of course, finding my husband on Vulcan will be difficult as usual, she thought aloud. Captain Tristan raised an eyebrow. The logical, super-organized Lieutenant Commander Terra doesn't know where her husband is. I'm surprised she doesn't have him on a shelf with a label. The thought of Terra being disorganized struck Tristan as absolutely ludicrous. I find it hard to understand why your husband would be so difficult to find. Vulcan is very technologically advanced after all. Terra explained, my husband Sovar is a spiritualist that enriches his soul for months at a time in the forge located in the Shikar district of Vulcan. I personally prefer our residence in the city of Shikar to the desert, but it is simply not logical to keep him from his interests. So he wanders in the desert for months on end? Asked Dr. Solace. Couldn't you give him a communicator? The Vulcan woman shook her head and replied, the forge is full of electromagnetic disturbances that cause devices such as transporters and communicators to malfunction. I attempted to design a collar for him to overcome the difficulties, but he said the idea was illogical, so I shelved the idea until I could come up with a more advanced design such as a bracelet. You wanted your husband to wear a collar like a dog? Asked Dr. Solace, trying to contain her giggling. It was the most logical solution at the time, replied Terra. Tristan nearly burst into laughter. So he is a spiritualist, said the captain, getting her humor under control. Does he have a regular job as well? Terra nodded. He also teaches at the Vulcan Institute for Defensive Arts. I met him there while I went to the Vulcan Science Academy, then I joined Starfleet. How did you come to be married? Asked the doctor. It doesn't sound like you have very much in common. It was a marriage arranged by our parents, explained Terra. It has proven to be a most logical and mutually beneficial match. So you do your thing and he does his, said Captain Tristan with a sweat drop. Precisely, answered the beautiful Vulcan woman. Stardate 2254.017 en route to 40 Eridani A system. Ship's log. The Republic has spent a week investigating Tory Prime IV. The safe zone, where the entity Otsutsuki Kagaya exists, is the only place on the surface of the entire planet that is habitable. Due to the danger presented by Kagaya, we will not be returning there. We've completed a full surface scan of the planet and further research needs to be done by a galactic survey cruiser or other science vessel. We are currently headed to 40 Eridani A, where the Vulcan Science Academy is waiting to examine our Chief Science Officer, Lieutenant Commander Terra. Ensign James Kirk was over in his friend Ben Finney's quarters conversing about what happened to them. The lieutenant was sharing his wisdom over some brandy. Jim, you've got to realize there are more dangers out there in the galaxy than you imagine. All of us that were on that mission were shaken up pretty badly. We all will have to undergo psychiatric checks for the next couple of months. Look at the bright side, at least you aren't in Commander Terra's shoes. I feel bad for her, Finney, replied Kirk. Here she is married and got pregnant by an alien intervention while on duty. What is she going to do? I could see her husband leaving her for that. Ben smiled. You don't know Vulcans very well, do you, Jim? Seeing the ensign shrug, Finney laughed. Vulcans are basically incapable of lying without some seriously logical reason. If Commander Terra tells her husband what happened, then there is no way he would doubt her. Besides, getting pregnant from a ball of energy isn't exactly a love affair, you know. I guess you have a point, agreed Kirk. Maybe I should read up on Vulcans a bit more in case I end up serving alongside one regularly. I never got to know Commander Terra. Probably a good idea, agreed Finney. After all, you were admiring her body a lot more than getting to know her. Kirk shrugged and said, can you blame me? Finney just laughed again. Terra was in her quarters talking to her mother-in-law over subspace. Mother Varric, it is imperative that I talk to Sovar. It is not a matter that I am comfortable discussing with others or leaving a message about. When you see him, please tell him to call me. I will be coming home soon and wish to see him face to face when I get home. Come now, Terra. What could be so bad that you could not talk to me about it? Asked Varric. The scientist wanted to say it was because Varric was a hopeless gossip that never got the facts straight, but Tara decided it wouldn't be logical to start a rift in the family if it could be avoided. I simply ask that you convey my request to Sovar. Please have him call me. Farewell, Mother Varric. I must go. Call again soon, Tara, replied Varric before the call ended. I should pray to the gods that my mother-in-law never catches wind of this situation, thought Tara. Sometimes it is difficult to believe my calm and relaxed husband Sovar is even related to his chatterbox of a mother. She quietly placed her hand on her flat stomach. It seems hard to believe, but I can already sense the baby's presence. USS Republic, Captain's office. After the Republic settled into a geosynchronous orbit around Vulcan, Captain Tristan was talking via subspace to the head of the Vulcan Science Academy, Director Sekla. Just so you understand, Director, I do not take these circumstances lightly, said the captain. Lieutenant Commander Tara is an excellent officer, and I am not sure what exactly will come of her situation. Starfleet Command has determined that her home world of Vulcan is the best place for her at this point. I hate to lose her, but Tara's health must come first. Director Sekla replied, Your dedication to your crew members is admirable, Captain. I remember being one of Tara's instructors, and she was simply a brilliant student. You may leave her here knowing that the best of care will be provided for her. I too have conferred with Starfleet Command, and they have made the most logical decision in this matter. I'll leave her in your care then, Director Sekla, said Captain Tristan. Tara's quarters. The young Vulcan scientist was inspecting all of her belongings, which were neatly and orderly packed. She had on her Starfleet dress uniform instead of her Vulcan formal robes. I will miss this place, she thought sadly. Still, it is the most logical decision for both myself and my child, regardless of logic. It had been very difficult Tara to make the decision to leave her friends and comrades in Starfleet. The USS Republic had been her home for many years, and she felt very melancholy about leaving her ship. After bidding a few last farewells, Tara beamed down to her old alma mater, the Vulcan Science Academy. Planet Vulcan, Shi-Kar District, Vulcan Science Academy. Tara arrived on a transporter platform with her belongings. To her honest shock, her husband Sovar was there waiting with his usual long hair and traveling robes. He quickly greeted his wife and said, Welcome home, Tara. What's up? I believe my husband would have been what the Terrans refer to as a hippie had he been born a human. Tara was glad to see Sovar hadn't changed a bit. She dreaded telling him what had happened. She said slowly, We have much to discuss in private. Sovar was sitting back drinking some Vulcan port to soothe his frayed nerves. Tara was upset for obvious reasons, and he was completely baffled. Sovar said slowly, The most important thing to me is you are safe and unharmed, Tara. You know I will support you regardless of what you decide to do. Tara let out a sigh of relief. I thank you, my husband. I was very concerned that you would react negatively. He touched his middle and forefingers to hers affectionately. Do you wish to keep this child? Have you bonded to it psychically? Yes, I can feel the child's presence inside of me, said Tara. It is an amazing feeling. Then we shall raise this boy as our own, said Sovar. It is the logical thing to do, and I can tell how strong your bond already is. Still what, Sovar? Asked Tara. It is difficult to conceive that you got pregnant from another woman, said Sovar seriously. Tara fought back her urge to smack her husband's male pride. I would liken the situation to artificial insemination than some bizarre form of double female mating, Sovar. 10 months later, on October 10, 2254, Tara gave birth to a blue-eyed, blonde-haired baby boy with whisker-like birthmarks on his cheeks. Aside of the whisker marks and pointed ears, he could pass off for a standard Terran human one. He was bright-eyed and looked intently at his mother as she held him. Sovar looked at his beautiful but exhausted wife and said, What shall we name our new son, Tara? Tara had a name pop into her mind that sounded like the voice of Kaguya. Naruto. His name will be Naruto, which means maelstrom. 5 years later, stardate 2259.283, planet Vulcan, city of Shi-Kar, Tara and Sovar's house. Personal log. Today is my son Naruto's 5th birthday, and he has passed all of his elementary school tests at the top of his class. I am very interested in seeing how he performs in an actual school environment. While his grasp upon logic is superb, at the same time he seems to completely accept emotionalism as well. His showing of emotion is rare, but it does happen infrequently. I have been very fortunate to be in contact with Lady Amanda Grayson, the wife of Sarek and mother of Spock. Her grasp on the mind of a hybrid child is much greater than mine, and her experience as a school teacher is a wealth of knowledge. Lady Amanda has described my son's fondness for riddles and occasional emotionalism as Naruto being a prankster by nature. He has been known to rearrange small items in the house, such as the order of spices on the spice rack, just to see how long it will take for Sovar or myself to notice such things. His pranks are harmless but are confounding to me as a parent. It is as if he plays these pranks or riddles just to see if others can figure out a logical solution, and there is always a flawless logical solution. Lady Amanda finds Naruto's behavior to be a source of endless amusement. Unfortunately, I have yet to fully grasp the concept of human humor. Tara looked at her blonde-haired, blue-eyed son with no small amount of pride. Naruto, today is your first day of school. Do your best and try to get along well with the other children. Because of some of your non-Vulcan features, I suspect you will have to deal with prejudice on their part, though it is not logical. Have a good day, my son. Naruto nodded energetically. I will be a credit to our family for both you and father, mother. I will strive to be the best in my class. Tara walked her son to the same school she attended as a child. After some further words of encouragement from his mother, Naruto entered the Shikar Primary School building to begin his formal education too. He soon found himself in a classroom with 25 other children, most of which looked upon him with disdain or confusion. A taller boy marched up to Naruto and said, I am Arev, son of Aravik. You are an outsider and do not belong here. Naruto said, I am Naruto, son of Sovar and Tara. I am half Vulcan and am entitled under law to all the rights of a full Vulcan citizen. I was born here in Shikar. Your bias is not only illogical, it is unethical. Arev frowned and was about to say something else but couldn't think of a logical argument. About that time their teacher Tapartha came in. She was in her 30s and carried herself in a stately manner. I am Tapartha and I will be your basic instructor for the next 5 years. You will address me as instructor or instructor Tapartha. I want each of you to stand up one at a time at your learning stations and introduce yourselves. You may also tell us a fact about yourself. We will all be getting to know each other. Let's start in the front row on the left. All of the students introduced themselves one by one and shared some very basic information. When Naruto introduced himself, he said, I like riddles. Which got a raised eyebrow from his teacher. She had no idea. Naruto was at his learning station answering test questions like clockwork. He had inherited his mother's intellect and was glad for it. During the first week of school he had been taunted 47 times by his classmates, primarily by the bully Arev, and managed to foil every attempt to get an emotional rise out of him. Mainly because it pissed them all off. In the end he followed his mother's personal creed, clarity of thought before rashness of action. The little blonde boy loved to learn and soaked up information like a sponge. To his classmates Naruto was a bit of an enigma. He was half Vulcan but he still outscored them all on the tests. Arev was discussing things with his gang that had formed. Arev was the leader, being the biggest and strongest of them all. He was betrothed to the prettiest little girl in class. Her name was Talira and she was a quiet type. She always wore blue robes. There were no other betrothed couples in the class, so it was a popular subject to discuss. Naruto was in deep thought. They had eaten lunch and were currently at recess so the children could relax. Once again Arev is glaring at me and trying to think of a way to best me. If he wasn't the biggest one in class, none of the others in the class would follow his lead. Naruto was playing the strategy game Cal-To by himself, and eventually others got interested in watching Naruto assemble the rods into a perfect sphere. Arev suddenly kicked the Cal-To set over, sending the little rods flying. My foot slipped, said the bully. Several students were disappointed that Naruto wasn't able to complete his game. Naruto said calmly to Arev, accidents happen, as he started picking up the pieces. Arev smirked and turned away triumphantly. Naruto's eyes gleamed as he thought to himself, I foresee several accidents happening to you in the near future, Arev. Naruto kicked a ball at recess and by the most confounding display of physics, it ricocheted off several different structures before it hit Arev in the back of the head and made the tall boy face plant hard into the dirt. That left a bruise. Arev's computer at his learning station had the test algorithms switched and he completely failed the math test, putting him at the bottom of the class in overall scoring. That was embarrassing. The bully challenged Naruto to a contest of strength and Naruto countered with a contest of Vulcan chess. Unless Arev was too afraid. Arev bragged he could beat Naruto at any challenge, and was subsequently slaughtered so badly that Arev ended up blushing green in shame. Arev was completely humiliated. Coincidentally, something bad happened to Arev each day that week that made the other students suspect Arev was simply accident-prone, or cursed, as illogical as that seemed. At the end of his third month of school, Naruto came limping home to his mother, having been beaten bloody by Arev and his followers. Tara was looking forward to seeing her son's first trimester of grades 3 and was shocked seeing her son coming home in that condition. She embraced him when he came inside and said, "Naruto, what happened to you, my son?" Naruto sighed. "It seems my classmates gave into emotionalism and decided to vent their frustrations on me because I am different." The blonde boy scratched the back of his neck. "I need to wash this blood off of me. I'm almost healed anyway." Tara gently stroked her son's soft blonde locks. "I will talk to your father about this. We will come up with a logical solution." She then helped Naruto wash himself. His wounds would have required hospitalization if Naruto didn't have his healing factor. "I will make this right somehow, my son." When Sovar got home that night from teaching at the Vulcan Institute for Defensive Arts, he found out what happened to Naruto and was furious inside. He spoke privately with his wife. The logical solution is to train Naruto to defend himself. Tara nodded sadly. "What should we teach him? Your mastery of the arts and mine are completely different disciplines." "You will teach him Vishan 4. said Sovar. "He already knows the basics and the style is much like dancing, which he enjoys. He has already studied pressure points as well." "What will you teach him, Sovar?" asked Tara. "You know several arts." Sovar scratched his chin. "Naruto's body type is suited to Kuriel IFLA 5. Tara asked, "You would teach him that brutish art? It is so uncivilized." "It is also very effective," answered her husband. "Consider how much strength he has given his genetics and it would come naturally to him. He is easily twice as strong as your average Vulcan." "That's because his people's home world had gravity nearly twice that of our own," said Tara. "We won't let our son suffer like this again," said Sovar as Tara nodded in agreement. Stardate 2260.001 Planet Vulcan, City of Shikar, Tara and Sovar's house. Personal log of Tara Mafau. After seeing our son's injuries, Sovar and I agreed that Naruto should learn to defend himself. As I am always home during the day with Naruto, I will teach him Vishan in the afternoons. On the other hand, Sovar often has to teach late in the day at the institute, so we have agreed that Sovar will take Naruto out to the forge during his month off from classes and give our son a crash course in the basics of Kuriel IFLA. As it is, I worry that Sovar will push Naruto too hard, so I have issued the appropriate death threats to my dear husband. Sovar was up bright and early with his long hair tied back and his traveling robes on hand. "The forge is a truly wondrous place, Naruto. Once you find your center there, it gives one's spirit the strongest of anchors to all of Vulcan and its people." "Are you sure you aren't just trying to avoid mother's wrath while training me?" asked Naruto as he ate his breakfast. His father looked shocked for a split second before he replied, "Think nothing of the sort, Naruto. Your mother agrees with this course of action." Naruto simply thought, "You didn't say no, father. I see. It must be the most logical course of action if mother agrees." Sovar deadpanned. "He definitely has Tara's intellect. Do not worry, my son. This trip will make you stronger both physically and mentally." The forge, 3 days later. "So this is the place you've told me so much about," said Naruto as he looked out at the arid desert. "There is a feeling of singularity here. I've never felt anything like it." "That is the feeling of the ancient past, my son," said Sovar reverently. "There is no other place on Vulcan like it. Let's set up camp here. We will be training your mind through meditation and your body with the martial arts. The forge itself will enrich your soul." For the first 2 weeks, father and son trained hard physically in the cooler hours and trained mentally during the hotter hours of the day. Naruto took to Kuriel IFLA like a fish to water, just as his father predicted. The boy pushed himself far harder than Sovar imagined possible, but with Naruto's healing factor involved, all his sore muscles were fully healed after he rested, but the meditation training wasn't going as well. Sovar sat across from his son in the lotus position. "Your young mind is too full of thoughts, Naruto. You are too smart for your own good sometimes. Let us stop and get some rest for the day." How do I empty my mind of thoughts, father? Said Naruto in a frustrated tone. Sitting for a moment, Sovar said. When you meditate you free your mind of your body and physical thoughts. You reach deep within for your center and bring it out. Sovar saw his son looking thoughtful and said, remember when we first arrived here and you said you felt a singularity? Seeing Naruto nod, Sovar said, search for that singularity within yourself. Let's go to sleep now. May I try to meditate a little longer, father? Asked Naruto. Sovar raised an eyebrow. That's a first. You may if you wish, Naruto, but don't stay up too long. Both your body and mind need rest. Sovar went on to sleep lightly until Naruto came to sleep as well. Naruto had felt that singularity within before. Now it was time to delve deep within himself and grasp it. As the blonde boy sat there, he saw images beyond his wildest imagination. He was effortlessly running through a forest and leaping from tree to tree without slowing down. He could run up, down, over, or even run on the branches upside down. He could even run up a bare cliff face as if it was level ground. That's when Naruto felt it. It was his core. The energy was powerful but calm. It was there, ready to be called upon. All Naruto had to do was reach out and grasp it. Sovar sprang up in alarm. He dozed off waiting for Naruto to come to bed. Opening the tent flap, he saw Naruto sitting deep in meditation in the twilight of the evening. Has he done it? But I sense something very primal, thought Sovar. Suddenly Naruto was surrounded by blue flame, and the shockwave of energy the blonde boy released nearly knocked his father over. To Sovar it was like the roar of a hungry beast surging forth. Sovar reached to his son and found the flames were cool to the touch. Naruto! 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 Yelled Sovar in fear for his son's life. Naruto opened his blue eyes and they were aglow with power, much to Sovar's shock. Naruto gave his father a smile in the twilight. His longer than usual canines reflected in the low light, and the blonde boy said, "You were right, father, I have found it." Naruto held his hand up as he admired the blue glow dancing across his skin. This is chakra. Are you in pain? Asked Sovar in a worried tone. Naruto flexed his fingers before making a fist. I've never felt better in my life, father. This must be what I've felt in the back of my mind all this time. Wait until you see what I can do with this stuff. I can't wait to tell mother. Sovar cringed. Terra is going to kill me. Stardate 2260.028 Planet Vulcan, City of Shikar, Terra and Sovar's house. Personal log. My husband Sovar and our son Naruto have returned from their month of training. I sensed my son's excitement telepathically all the way from out in the forge. When they got home I was very pleased to see how much Naruto had grown both physically and mentally during his short trip with Sovar. He explained that he had begun harnessing the power of chakra. Now my young son not only defies logic, he can defy gravity as well. As a scientist I am fascinated by this turn of events. As a mother I wish my son would quit walking up and down the walls and across the ceiling. Sovar, Terra and Naruto were sitting down to their morning meal. Sovar looked at his son as Naruto seemingly consumed his own weight in food. I think our son is getting ready to grow again, Terra, wouldn't you agree? Terra nodded. It seems you've become quite ravenous of late, Naruto. Slow down and chew your food properly, there is plenty more. I've just been so hungry and everything tastes so good, said Naruto. There isn't as much variety out in the desert. The onyx-eyed beauty barely hid her smirk. Your father's culinary skills are rather lacking. Sovar's face fell. I never made the claim that I was an excellent cook even back when we were first introduced. Terra was amused and it showed in her eyes. Naruto noted the affectionate banter between his parents and was enjoying the warmth of having his family together. It seems they missed each other very much while father and I were out in the forge. Mother almost smiled there. The blonde boy happily continued to demolish his meal and soon thanked Terra for the food. Stardate 2260.034 Shikar Primary School. A few days later Naruto arrived rather early to Instructor Tapartha's class and sat at his learning station. He was ready for the second session. Tapartha came in and saw her oddest but best scoring student diligently going through the startup protocols at his station, and she said to him, "Welcome back, young Naruto. It is good to see you are ready to learn." The blonde boy nodded. "Greetings to you, Instructor Tapartha. I am looking forward to the second session of the year. I believe good things will happen." Tapartha didn't miss the gleam in her student's blue eyes and wondered what that portended. I do hope you suffer less prejudice this session, Naruto. You are an eccentric but a good student. You do not deserve the bias against you. Thank you, instructor, said Naruto as his station came online. The next student in was Arev's betrothed to Lyra, and she went over to speak to Naruto. The cute girl's long brown hair was down and she spoke with concern. Are you still hurt, Naruto? Arev told me he injured you badly. Naruto looked up from his learning station. This is the first time she's ever addressed me personally. I wonder what Arev said to her to elicit such a reaction. He didn't notice that Tapartha was discreetly listening in. I am fine, to Lyra. I heal very quickly. Besides, it was Arev and his 6 friends that assaulted me, not just Arev. The blue-wearing girl looked surprised, but he gave me the impression it was him alone. It seems that his ego matters more than the truth to Arev, replied Naruto. That is shameful. Lyra nodded slowly. Still, I am glad you were okay. He had no right to hurt you. The pretty, quiet little girl went over to her own learning station and started it up. As the rest of the class filtered in, several peered over at Naruto with questioning looks. Obviously Arev has been bragging to all our classmates. Most of them seem surprised that I'm here, thought the blonde crossly. Arev and his little gang arrived soon and all of them seemed completely shocked that Naruto was there and seemingly unhurt. The bully stormed over. How is it you are even here? No one saw you over break, so I assumed you left for good. Naruto said in a flat tone. I have no idea why you've taken a personal interest in my off time, but I went camping in the forge with my father 2 days after you and your friends attacked me. You could hear a pin drop in the room and Tapartha said sternly, Arev, is it true you and your group attacked Naruto? The bully looked like a deer caught in the headlights. And no, I mean we didn't. Tapartha wouldn't stand for this. I will not accept dishonesty in my class, young Arev. Your parents will be informed of this and there will be consequences. She called out to each of the members of Arev's group by name and all of them admitted to attacking Naruto and leaving him beaten bloody. All Arev could do was glare hatefully at Naruto with tears of shame and embarrassment in his eyes. Naruto didn't bat an eyelash. Over recess, instructor Tapartha asked Naruto what exactly happened, and the blonde boy explained. I did not wish to escalate the situation any further. I told my parents what happened and they are training me to defend myself. The instructor nodded to herself. Then you went camping in the forge to train your body. I see. That is a very harsh environment to train in, Naruto. My father wished to train both my body and mind, said Naruto. The forge is a wondrous place for the spirit. Tapartha looked into Naruto's blue eyes and saw a fire of sheer determination burning in them. I see that, young Naruto. You would be completely within your rights to bring this assault to higher authorities, you know. Letting Arev suffer the shame of lying to the entire class is enough for me, instructor. It is a worse dishonor than him attacking me in the eyes of others. Naruto's tone of voice was like iron. Instructor Tapartha looked thoughtful for a moment and then said, that is a logical conclusion, Naruto. But do tell me if anything like this happens again. I will not have my students being abused physically or otherwise. It goes against my code of ethics as an instructor. The seasons came and went as Naruto learned in school. On his 7th birthday he was very disappointed to find he wasn't betrothed unlike other Vulcan children. This was not due to bias. The girl he was to be bonded to died with her parents in a seasonal earthquake. It saddened Naruto. He never met the girl, but somehow her death made him feel very empty inside. It also led to him being teased by his meaner classmates that no one would want him as a mate anyway. Naruto grieved for some time before he returned to his normal self. He was told that there was a possibility of forming a new bonding when he took the Cawan 1 test of maturity in a few years. Stardate 2262.289 Planet Vulcan, City of Shikar, Terra and Sovar's house. Naruto turned 8 years old and was looking forward to learning the basics of telepathy, etiquette, calculus and quantum physics. Of course, his mother Terra had been drilling him in etiquette since birth. She adopted the unusual view that if Naruto was going to play pranks he should be polite about it. Lady Amanda Grayson thought the concept was hysterical. The blonde boy was in his backyard with his father Sovar practicing his Kareel Ifla and his Vishan, which the boy practiced both separately and combined into one fluid martial art. Though purists might be shocked, Sovar found his son's ingenuity and resourcefulness to be outstanding. Combining that with Naruto's far superior strength and aerobatics made the blonde boy an enjoyable sparring partner for his father. Naruto rarely used visible chakra or jutsus. He learned a few from ancestral memory, except when they trained more heavily out in the forge. The blonde hybrid wasn't ready to reveal his hidden abilities to the public just yet. Naruto was getting ready to charge his father again when Sovar held up his hand in a stop motion. "It sounds like your mother is home, Naruto. Let's go inside and see her." The blue-eyed boy nodded in concern. He had been worried about Tara as she had been to the doctor twice now. "I hope mother is okay," he thought. When they came inside, Tara and Sovar touched their middle and forefingers together in a warm greeting and she ruffled Naruto's blonde locks affectionately. "I bring good news," said Tara. "We will soon be welcoming a new daughter into our home." Sovar was immensely pleased and it showed. "This is excellent news. Just as importantly, how are you, Tara?" Tara beamed. "Both the baby and I are fine. She is in perfect health and we are 3 weeks along." She looked at Naruto. "What do you think, my son? Are you looking forward to having a little sister?" Naruto's blue eyes were big as saucers. This is awesome. Can I teach her calculus? Can I?" Both of his parents expected an emotional reaction from their son. This was just too big for the blonde boy to contain himself. "I'm sure we'll all have lots to share with her, Naruto," said Sovar proudly. The news made Naruto's day. Shizuka Primary School. "So I am going to be a big brother," said Naruto enthused to some of his classmates while at recess. He received many polite congratulations on this good news until Arev said, "So she is going to be a freak like you?" Naruto's blue eyes flashed and he was standing in front of Arev in a split second. No one could follow his movements. He had the head taller Arev's throat in his grasp and pulled the choking boy down to his eye level. "I tolerate you and your taunting of me, Arev," said Naruto in a calm voice cold as death. "If you ever insult my family or my baby sister again, I will bury you. Do you understand me?" The choking lummox could only nod emphatically as his oxygen supply was running out. Naruto nodded once and threw the bully to the ground. Then he went indoors to meditate and calm his rage. No one had ever seen Naruto act violent before and basically avoided the subject of Arev and his bruised neck for the rest of the day. Insulting an unborn child was considered rather crass by everyone, including Talira. After-school instructor Tapartha was talking with Naruto quietly. "I will accept whatever punishment you see fit, instructor," said Naruto in a subdued tone. Tapartha shook her head. "I didn't ask you to stay for punishment, Naruto. I wanted to make sure that you have calmed down and are all right. My concern is for you, not what you did. Arev's comments were inexcusable and I was going to reprimand him, but you already did that, so to speak. Some days it is hard to deal with all the insults, instructor," said Naruto sadly. "To insult my baby sister was just too much." "Do you talk to your parents about these things, Naruto?" asked the instructor kindly. Naruto nodded. "My mother and father are my biggest supporters. They know what happens to me and help me with it." Tapartha nodded. "You've never made a display of anger before, Naruto. Other children have reacted just as badly. Let's just consider this issue closed. Do talk to your parents tonight, though. Will you be all right to walk home?" "I will be fine, instructor Tapartha," said Naruto. "Thank you for caring." Naruto went home to his mother and quietly cried with his head in her lap. Tara gently soothed her young son and ran her fingers tenderly through his blonde hair until he fell asleep. Stardate 2265.289 Planet Vulcan, City of Shizuka Primary School. 3 years had passed and Naruto was entering his 11th year of age. He'd spent his morning divided between his studies and his adorable 2-year-old baby sister Taylok II that tended to keep the whole family on the go in the morning, as she was an extremely curious child and full of activity at all times. Naruto's classwork was rather busy with core logic and definition and the principles of analysis among other heavy subjects. Now he was starting his school day. "These are your final years of primary schooling," said instructor Tapartha. "In the next 2 to 4 years you will all complete your formative training and your formal training for your future careers will begin. The first part of this session we will begin the Cawan ritual for those prepared for it. You should speak carefully with your parents before taking this trial. If you do not deem yourself ready, then it is logical to wait. You are to inform me and I will submit it to the headmaster for approval." Tara and Sovar's house. That evening, Naruto was sitting at dinner with his family. And therefore, it seems logical to me to get the Cawan ritual over with as soon as possible," stated Naruto. "I've been spending 2 or 3 months a year camping in the forge with father for years. I'm quite familiar with the area." Tara automatically intercepted some thrown food from her daughter Taylok and set it back on the baby's plate. "While I can't refute your argument, Naruto, you shouldn't take the Cawan so lightly. The forge isn't a forgiving place and you've always had your father with you." "I think he's more than ready," said Sovar. "Naruto is probably as good at foraging in the desert as I am. Like that time he scared off a Lamatia 3 with his chakra alone." Sovar's eyes suddenly got huge and he covered his mouth. "Somehow I don't think I was ever informed of that particular instance, husband of mine," said Tara with a frown. "Oh, boy, thought both father and son as one. A thorough and irrefutably logical." Tongue-lashing later, both Sovar and Naruto were sent to bed early, but Tara was convinced her son was well prepared for anything the forge could throw at him during the Cawan, and she gave her consent. Tara and Sovar's house. 2 days later, the game of sublime logic, poker, said Sovar grandly as he dealt the cards to his wife and son. He immediately put on his poker face, they came naturally to Vulcans, and watched for any signs of Tara or Naruto's identical poker faces slipping up. Baby Taylok was giggling as she watched from her high chair. This was family bonding at its best in Naruto's household. Naruto said, "I'll take 2, father." Picking up his 2 cards and discarding 2 others, the blonde said, "I have been studying the concept of cheating and sleight of hand recently." Tara raised an eyebrow as she looked at her son. "To what purpose, Naruto?" "I'd be interested in knowing as well," said Sovar curiously. Naruto narrowed his eyes and said, "When humans invented this game with a strict set of rules, they also invented ways to circumvent those same rules at the same time. It baffles me. There is no discernible logic whatsoever. It is like creating a government that is designed to fail from the outset." Tara explained, "What you are grappling with is the concept of greed, my son. Many races play poker with the only goal of material gain by winning. We Vulcans logically play for the pleasure of the game. Some races get very emotional about it. I learned this in Starfleet." Naruto's eyes widened as his mother took 2 cards herself. "Is that why you are so good at playing, mother?" The onyx-eyed beauty said, "No, it is because one of my doctoral degrees is in quantum physics. Counting cards is child's play." Sovar and Naruto's faces fell and little Taylok giggled again. "Why do we play with her again?" Naruto asked his father. Sovar said, "Because it is a pleasure to be repeatedly trounced by a beautiful woman." Seeing Naruto's look of utter disbelief, he said, "You'll understand when you are older, my son." Tara looked rather pleased with herself. Stardate 2265.319 Planet Vulcan, the Forge. It had been a month since the Cawan had been announced and 11 children from Naruto's class had elected to try. 23 other children from other classes were there to try as well. It wasn't considered a total disgrace to fail and try again when they felt more mature about themselves, so a few of the students were just testing the waters. When Naruto put in his submission first, he wasn't surprised to see his rival Arev automatically do the same, as well as Arev's 6 followers. There were also 3 girls, including the quiet Talira. She must be going because her betrothed is, thought Naruto. Truthfully, Naruto didn't think the blue-wearing girl looked ready. The proctor for the ritual outlined the rules. You have 10 days to survive in the forge. You have no food, water or weapons, so you must forage to survive. You are forbidden from helping one another during your journey. If you find another injured or dead, you are to report their position back to the proctors at the end of your 10-day survival course. The path you must take is marked on your maps. There are 4 different paths and each of you will be sent out an hour apart, so there will be no interference between participants. There will be casualties. This ritual has been in place since before our enlightening to the ways of logic and is your first step towards adulthood. Do well and you will prevail." Well, that was less than inspiring, thought Naruto. He sat down to await his turn. Naruto was in his sleeveless traditional desert robes like his father's that he always wore in the forge. "Why are you dressed in rags?" asked Arev contemptuously. Naruto ignored his rival in favor of meditating. Eventually Arev got bored trying to antagonize Naruto and went over to his group of friends instead. 4 hours later, Naruto's name was called. "Naruto, son of Sovar. Are you prepared?" asked the proctor. Naruto took one last drink from the provided canteen and handed it to the proctor. "I am ready, sir," said the blonde. The proctor handed Naruto a map and said, "Survive and succeed, young one." Naruto nodded and went on his way. The first day out in the forge was very routine for the blonde given his experience. On Naruto's second day in the desert, he sat down to meditate during the hottest hours of the day. Planet Vulcan's blazing sun overhead shot the temperatures up to nearly 65 degrees Celsius, and staying in the shade during that time of day was the best way to conserve energy and stay cool. "I've been traveling at a steady pace for 2 days and haven't run into anyone else. Of course, many travel faster than they should, so I may not run into anybody. I hope that I'll survive. I know logically that casualties are inevitable, but all life is precious." When the sun got lower in the sky, Naruto set off again, gathering edibles as he traveled along. He thought back to his father Sovar's teachings in the forge over the years. "The forge is a wondrous place, Naruto. Once your spirit becomes one with it, you will see life is everywhere in the desert. The desert will provide food, water and shelter as needed. You just have to know where to look for it." Father was right, of course, thought the blonde. By staying in the shade of the El Langan Mountains, it's easy to stay protected from the elements in the mornings, and watching for native flora and fauna has become second nature to me. As Naruto walked along peacefully, he heard a moan that was definitely not an animal. Naruto walked over and looked down in a ravine. He saw one of Arev's followers there. He recognized the boy as Kesh. Kesh was bloodied, and it was obvious he'd fallen into the ravine somehow. Kesh saw Naruto's shadow and looked up. The boy had tears rolling down his cheeks. "And Naruto, it's you. My leg is broken. Am I to die here?" Naruto couldn't tell if Kesh was crying from fear or pain from the injury. "Stop crying and staunch your wounds to preserve your fluids. Stay where you are. When I finish, I will send help for you. Be strong for those who love you," commanded the blonde as he marked Kesh's position on his map. Kesh hiccuped and nodded. He said, Thank you, Naruto." The blonde nodded and went on his way, wondering if he would ever see Kesh alive again. "I didn't actually help him. I just encouraged him," the blue-eyed boy muttered to himself. 3 days later, Naruto opened his eyes in the morning to sounds of a scream in the nearby foothills. He went to investigate, and a half-hour later he found a girl from another class. She was dead and torn in half at the waist. Lamatius got her, from what Naruto could tell. The blonde boy felt sick inside. He wanted to cry or throw up, but either would cause him to lose precious fluids and he couldn't risk dehydration. Naruto gently reached down and closed her eyes. He noticed she had a necklace on and took it off of her to give to her family. It was sad to say, but her body would probably be consumed by predators in the next few days, so there might not be remains to be found. Marking the site of the body on his map, Naruto traveled onwards and tried not to think about it. On Naruto's 7th day in the desert, he heard a whimper and recognized Talira's voice. Remembering what he'd seen 2 days ago, Naruto shot off in the direction of the noise. He saw Talira with her back against a tree, paralyzed in fear. 2 large Lamatius were stalking her, and Naruto unleashed a shockwave of killing intent upon them. One of the Lamatius turned tail and ran, but the other roared at him. Naruto gave the creature a chakra-enhanced whirlwind kick to the nose to knock it back. While the creature was stunned, he said, "Wind style, gale palm." The big predator was sent tumbling before it whimpered and ran away in fear. Naruto looked over at Talira and saw she had slid down into a sitting position. She looked dehydrated and fearful. Finally, her breathing slowed down and she said, "Why, you saved me, Naruto." "How did?" She shook her head to clear it. "I thank you." The blonde boy looked around and said to no one in particular, "You know, I don't remember saving or helping anybody. There were 2 Lamatius in my way and I chased them off. I shouldn't have wandered into the foothills they live in. It's much safer down by the tree line. I guess I'd better head back down in that direction. There are some edible white flowers that really smell bad there. They taste terrible but are very nutritious and have water sacs in the bulbs." He gave one last look at Talira, who nodded hesitantly in understanding. He said, "Use your mind and you will overcome the adversities in this place." Then Naruto went on his way. "I hope she makes it," he thought worriedly. On the 10th day in the forge, Naruto saw his chief tormentor Arev lying face down, flat on the ground under a tree. The boy wasn't moving and wasn't in a natural sleeping position either. Naruto debated with himself for a few moments until he remembered his mother Tara saying, You will learn that all lives are precious, even those of your enemies. Naruto sighed. Technically a Rev isn't my enemy even if I dislike him greatly, he thought aloud. Naruto went over and saw a Rev wasn't dead. The larger boy was dried out. The dumb lummox tried to hurry and got himself dehydrated in the process. Thought the blonde with a frown. He'll live if I report his position. Naruto marked the spot on his map and continued on his way. Several hours later Naruto made it back to the starting point feeling exhausted. Seeing the one girl had died and having to leave 3 others alone in the desert had been truly taxing on the blonde boy. Logic told him he did everything he could for the others because of the rules of the test, but his conscience still nagged at him. Naruto had a meal provided and lots of water, but mentally he was completely worn out. He gave his reports on everyone's locations except to Lyra's, who he never mentioned. He also gave the necklace he recovered to the proctors. Naruto was going to meditate and wait up, but he dozed off in the shelter provided by the proctors. His personal Cawan journey was complete. All there was now was to wait for news of the others. When Naruto awoke, he heard Lyra's exhausted voice as she spoke with a proctor. I was fortunate that I overheard someone saying those flowers are edible though they taste so foul. It probably saved my life. The proctor said, it is an old desert journeyman's trick. Most are so repelled by the smell that they stay away from them. It is a natural defense of that plant. You are most fortunate indeed, young one. Naruto stepped out of the sleeping tent into the main area where food was provided and saw Lyra eating ravenously along with many other children in various states of exhaustion. Her normally vibrant blue robes were a mess. The blonde went over to the head proctor and asked, if I may ask, sir, were the injured ones I reported on rescued? The old proctor had a gleam in his eye. Thanks to your diligence they were both found and were taken back to the city for medical treatment. Tell me, son of Sovar. Your maps to them were extraordinarily well detailed. We would never have found young Kesh if you hadn't listed the precise elevation. Are you familiar with the lay of the land? He asked knowingly. The blonde nodded. My father has taken me camping at least twice a year in the forge since I was 5 years old. It is a wondrous place. The proctor raised an eyebrow and then said, indeed it is, young one, indeed it is. The next day, of the 34 who tried, 26 passed, 5 failed to complete the ritual and 3 died. Said the proctor. Our casualties were high this time, but the forge is an unforgiving place for those that do not know the ways of the desert. All 26 of you here have done well and have taken the first steps into adulthood. You families will be proud. The 5 who failed are in the Shikar City Hospital recovering. The 3 who perished have been recovered and their families have been notified. Peace and long life, young ones. The children answered with, live long and prosper, and were soon on a transport back to the city. Stardate 2265.331, Terra and Sovar's house. Terra and Sovar welcomed their relatives into their home to celebrate Naruto's passage into adulthood. Terrifyingly for Naruto, and his parents, all of his cousins and other relatives suddenly considered him part of the family. All of the blonde boy's relations outside of his nuclear family always kept Naruto at arm's length because he was a hybrid, but now they all seemed to embrace him and brought him many gifts. Even his paternal grandmother Varrick seemed enthused about the Cawan ritual, and she previously didn't consider Naruto related to her in any way. As the festivities went on, Naruto Chakra hopped up to the roof of the house to meditate in peace. He didn't want to make waves, but the behavior of his kin was highly irritating and hypocritical in his mind. Father's mother Varrick actually told me to address her as grandmother, Naruto thought angrily. I calculated the odds of a meteor striking my home to happen before that would. Everyone is being so kind and welcoming that I want to move to Andor. Down in the house, Terra and Sovar felt much the same way as their son did, but were focusing on being gracious hosts rather than ruffling any feathers. They both knew where Naruto was and didn't say anything. Neither of them appreciated the two-faced behavior of their families either. Where is that grandson of mine? Asked the ever-chatty Varrick. We need to discuss his future place in the clan and his choice of profession. Sovar bit his tongue but thought, since when have you considered Naruto family mother? I believe he stepped out for some fresh air, mother. Well, the family always has been adept at being merchants. Pondered Varrick aloud. I can think of 2 cousins in the family that are close to his age and unbonded. I do not believe matchmaking is logical or appropriate at this juncture, Mother Varrick, said Terra. I also have no idea which cousins you are referring to. I was referring to Metana or Zarin, my dear, said Varric. Zarin in particular is so radiant. Besides, she lives close by in the artisan quarter of Shikar. Terra said, that child will judge everything in aesthetics if she is anything like her artist parents. She will be too shallow to see Naruto for who he is. Nonsense. Scoffed Varric. Zarin has never even laid eyes upon Naruto. As artistic as she is, Zarin might be captivated by his lovely blue eyes alone. They are both unbonded and the same age. We should arrange for them to meet. They seem like an unsuitable match, mother, said Sovar. Varric asked, then what about Metana in Volcana Rer? She's a lovely child of 12 years of age. Later that night, after Naruto came down and bid all of his relatives the appropriate farewells and thanked them for their gifts, he said to his parents, I believe that my cause won was far easier than dealing with a bunch of relatives that I've never met before. Sovar nodded. It was stressful for all of us, Naruto. Your mother and I think that the way you've been treated as an outsider all these years is very wrong. It is shameful the way they have treated you, their own blood. I am in total agreement with your father, said Terra as she rocked little Taylok gently in her arms. Both sides of the family are looking into potential mates for you, so we will have to tread carefully. Is it too late to move to Andor, mother? Asked the stressed-out Naruto. You are truly my son, said Terra with amusement in her onyx eyes. She yawned. Our home is a mess. Tomorrow we will all be at home so we can straighten this place up. I am simply too tired to stay up all night cleaning after that mob. The next morning was a busy one for Naruto's family. They basically cleaned and straightened the house back to normal standards after an early breakfast. Around noon everything was as it should be and little Taylok was taking a nap in her mother's arms. Terra heard a knock on their front door and said, Naruto, will you get the door please? Taylok is asleep. Naruto got up and went to the door. To his surprise it was Talyra. She said bashfully, Naruto, I am glad you are home. Do you have time to visit? The blonde hadn't ever had a classmate come over before and was a bit stunned to have any sort of personal company. Certainly. Please come in. He turned to Terra and said, Mother, I have a guest from my class at school. Terra looked over and saw a very lovely young Vulcan girl with her brown hair tied back in a braid. She was wearing the blue robes of the old dynastic clan. The girl bowed formally and said, Hello, I am Talyra of the Tolaris clan. Thank you for inviting me into your home. Naruto's mother said, I welcome you, Talyra. I am Terra of the Mafao clan. Ah, I did not realize you were of the Mafao clan, Naruto, said Talyra. Her eyes glittered. How fascinating. Your noble ancestors rode Gerals 4 across the plains in ancient times. And you are descended of the honorable Blue Dynasty, said Naruto. I realized you favored blue robes. Now I know why. Please come in and I'll make some tea for us. Mother, would you like some? No, I already have water, Naruto, said Terra. Go ahead and spend some time with your friend. He seems very shocked she is here. Of course, Naruto has never invited a friend over. Naruto soon served his guest some hot tea and said, I was not expecting company or I would have been better prepared for a guest. I've never even had a guest before. It is all right. I wanted to thank you for your advice. I think it is safe to say you saved my life, Naruto. Talyra was beaming at this point. You are welcome, said Naruto, but I was only talking to myself. Talyra hid a small smile behind her teacup. Of course you were, Naruto. Did Arev make it out of the hospital yet? Asked Naruto. Talyra frowned ever so slightly. Arev gave into emotionalism when he found out he failed the cause won. He was absolutely furious at me for completing it when he didn't and grew enraged when he found out you saved his life. I cannot bear to be around him at this point. I am very sorry to hear that, said Naruto. Someone should smack that creep. His actions towards you are unacceptable. He should have been proud of you and congratulated you for passing the cause won. The brown-haired girl said pointedly, he should consider you a great friend for saving his life. Her dark brown eyes flashed with emotion. Arev behaves like an infant. I no longer wish to be with him. This is the final insult he has heaped upon me. Naruto's eyebrows raised as surprise at her declaration and Talyra said, I also spoke to Kesh. He is eternally grateful for your efforts. Kesh told me he had given up but you inspired him to stay strong and survive. He said from now on he wishes to be a great friend to you and how wrong he was about you in the past. That is how a Rev should have acted. I will have to visit Kesh and see about his recovery then, said Naruto. I'd best not even mention a Rev again. Tolyra nodded in approval. I think that is an excellent idea, Naruto. I believe Kesh would truly appreciate a visit from you. She paused and looked into her teacup before she looked back up at Naruto hopefully. If you like, we could visit him together, perhaps tomorrow morning. I could come over and meet you here. Naruto said, I think that would be all right. Let me check with my mother. Terra had been quietly listening to her son's conversation while she rested her eyes and Taylok slept. This girl wishes to get out of a betrothal, and she seems to have eyes for my son instead. I wonder how he saved her life. Naruto came into the front room and quietly asked if he could visit another classmate at the hospital the next morning. Terra gave her consent and Tolyra seemed immensely pleased. The brown-haired girl soon bid both of them farewell and left with a spring in her step. Naruto thought to himself, I wonder what tomorrow will bring. In the dry heat of the Mojave Desert, a pair of high school teenagers was walking in between classes on their campus and were complaining about the excessive heat. God damn, I'm going to die here, said a tall boy. As the two moved along they saw another of their number running around the school track grounds in the blazing heat as if it was nothing. She was wearing a t-shirt and cut-off denim shorts that showed off her curvaceous figure very nicely. The boy said, Look at Shizuka today. She's better for me than air conditioning. How does she do that in this heat, Mark? Asked a blonde girl. The now-named Mark said lecherously, I don't know, Leah. Oh, you mean totally rock those shorts? What a body she's got under that. Shut up, dumbass. Growled Leah. Hey Shizuka, over here, waved the blonde girl. Shizuka waved and ran over to the others. Hi guys, how's it going? She shook out her ponytail a bit. Her hair was jet black that contrasted with her intense green eyes and fair skin. I was just getting in my laps. Leah said, We're dying of heat stroke and you aren't even sweating. How does that work? Shizuka laughed and said, You know I don't have sweat glands, I'm a Vulcan, remember? She motioned to her pointed ears and grinned. You haven't forgotten again, have you? Leah sighed, You don't act like a Vulcan. You're pretty damned illogical if you ask me. I was adopted virtually at birth by my human parents, said Shizuka with a shrug. What the hell do you expect? Mark said with a grin, I don't know any Vulcan chicks as sexy as you, Shizuka. Shizuka said in a flat tone, You don't know any other Vulcans, period. You really need to get a life, Mark. Your pickup lines are getting even worse. Leah laughed and Mark pouted. The three headed off to class and Leah asked, What's with you exercising so much more recently, Shizuka? You've already got a great body. Shizuka said seriously, We're going to be 17 and I'll graduate high school this next spring. I need to be in top shape if I'm going into Starfleet. My old man was in for years and loved it. I want to see the stars. You should join early too, Leah. You've got the brains for it, but you need to work out more. They've got a great medical program and I know you want to study medicine. My parents would never give me permission to join the military a year early, if at all, said Leah. What about me, Shizuka? Asked Mark. Think I could captain a ship? You'd never make it, said the green-eyed beauty. You have to have a brain to get into Starfleet. Stick with farming. Mark cried, So mean, and the two girls laughed. Stardate 2265.332 Planet Vulcan, City of Shikar, Terra and Sovar's house. Personal log. It seems that my 11-year-old son Naruto has ended up in a highly unlikely situation. As his mother I am baffled. Now that he has passed his cause, my unbonded son has a bonded girl in his class interested in him. There are also arrangements being made to meet 4 of his cousins from either side of the family. I am beginning to believe Naruto's idea of moving to Andor is a highly logical solution. Terra looked over at her son as he looked nonplussed at the pile of gifts that he received from various family members. They were all wrapped nicely, but the only gift he had opened was the one he got from Terra, Sovar and Taylok. It was an antique tome of some of the treatises of Surik, who brought the philosophy of logic to Vulcan. Naruto had always wanted a copy and was very pleased with his gift. The rest Naruto set aside for later. Actually, the blonde was considering boxing them up to dispose of them, but that would be considered rather crass, so he scrapped that idea for his parents' sake. Seeing her son was preoccupied, Terra said, So tell me about this young Talira and how you saved her life. She is a longtime classmate of mine. I chased off a couple of Lamatius that happened to be in my path and then thought a couple of things aloud," said Naruto. These actions may have inadvertently helped Talira in her Cawan trial. Terra said, "I don't suppose those Lamatius were endangering her person, were they?" "They were coincidentally in her proximity," admitted Naruto in a low tone of voice. "I am very proud of you, my son," said Terra in a pleased tone. Naruto raised his eyebrow in surprise. Then his mother said, "Logically, whether you intentionally saved her life or not is a matter of perspective. You did well to coincidentally help your friend without breaking the rules of the ritual." Young Talira is obviously very pleased and thankful as well. The blonde blushed ever so slightly in embarrassment and said, "I had best get prepared to go on my trip to see my classmate Kesh at the hospital." Sovar poked his head around the corner after Naruto went to his room and said, "It seems our son can't help himself when it comes to helping others." Terra looked over at her husband warmly and said, "That indeed seems to be the case." Stardate 2265.332 Planet Trialis IV, Trialis System. Ship's log. Commodore Eric Grayson reporting. NCC 1705 USS Excalibur is entering the Trialis system following a distress call from the planet Trialis IV. The SOS was picked up by the civilian liner SS Sunrise from outside the system and was relayed to us via Starfleet Command. Trialis IV is a Class M world with a checkered past. The Trialis system exists in the territory known as the Borderlands near the Klingon Federation border. Though it is habitable, the planet has never been formally colonized by the Federation in order to avoid conflict with our Klingon neighbors. It is mainly known as an occasional hideout for Orion pirates and also was historically known as a home for a group of genetically augmented humans raised by Dr. Eric Sung some 100 years ago in the mid-2100s. What this distress signal could mean is ominous at best, so Starfleet Command reasoned that sending the nearest command cruiser Excalibur was an appropriate measure. Commodore Eric Grayson looked at the main view screen on the bridge showing the seemingly peaceful green planet Trialis IV. The Excalibur had carefully scanned the area and was at condition yellow with the shields up and phasers armed in case of possible hostiles such as pirates or even Klingons. Once they settled into orbit, other than a steady but low-powered SOS from the surface, nothing out of the ordinary was noted. Chief Science Officer Mikhail Dreyfus looked up from his scanner. The origin of the distress call is the base that Dr. Eric Sung was known to have used when raising up the stolen augment children from the eugenics wars on Earth centuries ago. Grayson winced, having done some papers on the war about Khan Noonien Singh during his academy days. Genetically engineered humans, or augments, as they were known, were incredibly bad news. "Shall we answer the distress call, sir?" asked the communications officer Sandra Talbot. She looked perplexed at the Commodore's hesitation. "Make it so, Lieutenant Talbot," said Grayson warily. "In the meantime, scan Sung's old facility for life forms, Commander Dreyfus. I'm not opening Pandora's box if I can help it." Talbot focused in on the SOS and made several attempts at replying before she got a response. Her eyes suddenly widened and Grayson said, "What is it, Sandy?" "It's a young girl," said Talbot. "I don't think she's even a teenager yet." Grayson looked puzzled and Dreyfus said, "I've confirmed a single humanoid life form in the facility. That's all." "Put her on screen," said Grayson. A beautiful child with long blonde hair and ice blue eyes appeared on the screen. She said very seriously, "Have you come to rescue me from this place? I am the only one left." "I'm Commodore Eric Grayson of the USS Excalibur," said the Commodore. "How did you end up there, child? That was a place that the augments lived in a century ago." The girl raised an eyebrow and said, "Is that what you call us? It has been a year since the elders died out. They forbade me to leave this place, but I am tired of living alone." "Are you saying you are a genetically engineered human?" asked Grayson. "How old are you?" "Yes, I am a product of superior genetic engineering," said the girl. "I am 11 years old. My name is Samui." Grayson looked into the beautiful little girl's icy blue eyes and wondered if he should rescue her or fire phasers and destroy her from orbit. He saw images of ancient wars flash through his mind before he quashed the thought. "You are all alone then?" "I am the last of my kind," said Samui emotionlessly. "I want to go to Earth and see where my ancestors were born." "I will send some people down to pick you up, Samui," said Grayson to the relief of his crew. Cool, said Samui. Cool, asked the Commodore. Yes, cool, affirmed Samui. I'll pack my stuff. Later. The screen went blank. What does the temperature have to do with anything? Asked Mikhail to no one in particular. She was giving her approval at the Commodore's decision. Commander Dreyfus, said Lieutenant Talbot. Cool is a 20th century Earth phrase for something attractive or impressive. Strangely hot means the same thing. Seeing the confusion on her fellow crew members' faces, Sandra added, I'm not making this up. I learned that while watching old films from that era. Stardate 2265.332 Planet Vulcan, City of Shikar, Terra and Sovar's house. Naruto answered the door and saw Lyra standing there basically beaming. Good morning, Naruto, said the blue-wearing girl. Are you ready to go? I was just getting my sandals. Please come in for a moment and I'll get them. Terra and Sovar exchanged proper greetings with Lyra, and Sovar gave Naruto some money. Why don't you and young Lyra have a meal together while you are out? Surely you will get hungry. Naruto bowed slightly. Thank you, father, we will do that. Lyra led Naruto along as he rarely went out into the city by himself. He'd never actually been to the hospital except for regular checkups. I hope this place doesn't hold bad memories for you, said Lyra in a concerned tone. I remember how Arev and the others hurt you badly when we were little. Naruto said, it is of no concern, I've never been to the hospital for anything that wasn't routine. Mother makes sure I get a physical checkup twice a year. Thank you for your concern though. Lyra's eyes widened. But I was told you were beaten bloody, didn't you go to the hospital? The blonde replied, I heal very fast because of my hybrid nature. I was completely well by the next morning. Lyra looked at him in disbelief, though she said nothing. Naruto said, let me demonstrate. It will be far easier to understand then. What do you mean? Asked Lyra as Naruto pulled out a small utility tool with a knife folded up in it. Naruto said, it is very simple. I will nick my finger with a blade and it will heal quickly. Just watch carefully. She said, wait, you don't have to. Naruto nicked his thumb before she could say any more and she panicked as his green lifeblood dripped to the ground. Naruto, you shouldn't. Just watch my thumb, Lyra, said Naruto. Lyra was baffled as the small wound healed before her eyes. Naruto wiped the blood off of his thumb and showed her the unblemished skin, much to her astonishment. So, as you can see, I heal very quickly, said Naruto. The brown-haired girl simply stared for a moment before she felt his thumb and saw it was indeed completely healed. That is amazing, Naruto. I had no idea. Naruto had a bit of amusement in his blue eyes. Let's just keep it our little secret, otherwise, everyone would want a demonstration. Her dark brown eyes widened and then she said, that is a most logical conclusion, Naruto. Your secret is safe with me. Naruto nodded and the pair proceeded to the hospital. City of Shikar, Old Quarter. Naruto and Lyra went through the Old Quarter and saw many tourists admiring the ancient architecture there. A human woman cooed, what an adorable little couple in native robes. Can I take your picture? The blonde looked at the woman flatly as if to say, really? And Lyra kind of hid behind him. Naruto said, forgive us ma'am, but we are rather busy. Perhaps another time. As they left, the disappointed human woman behind Lyra whispered, how rude. Don't tourists have other things to take pictures of? I was told it was the nature of off-world tourists to impose upon others, said Naruto. They give one a bad impression. That's the first time I've met a human that wasn't a scientist. Lyra perked up and asked, why would you have met human scientists, Naruto? The blonde hummed, Well, my mother is a graduate of the Vulcan Science Academy and holds 3 doctorates, so scientists of various races often seek out her opinions. She still actively writes manuscripts for the Academy and other publications such as the Federation Starfleet Scientific Journal. She has 3 doctorates? Asked Lyra in amazement. No wonder you are so smart, Naruto. Then the girl asked, why would your mother write for a military journal? Mother is a Starfleet naval reservist that holds the rank of lieutenant commander, said Naruto proudly. She was the chief science officer on 3 different vessels in Starfleet. They often contact her to further their scientific knowledge. Is your father in Starfleet as well? Asked the pretty brown-haired girl. Naruto shook his head. Father prefers to keep his feet firmly planted on Vulcan. He is a teacher at the Vulcan Institute for Defensive Arts. Then that is why you were able to defeat those Lamatis, said Tolyra in realization. You are amazing, Naruto. Naruto blushed slightly. My parents are amazing, I'm not. What do your parents do, Tolyra? My mother and father both hold public offices, said Tolyra nonplussed. Well, I'm sure they help shape our society in a productive way, said Naruto. I'm sure they do, said the blue-wearing girl. How embarrassing. Father is in charge of sidewalk repair in the artisan quarter and mother is in the committee for museum fundraising. Fortunately, Tolyra hid her distress fairly well and she changed subjects to Kesha's recovery. Shikar Hospital. Naruto and Tolyra signed in at the front desk at the hospital and quietly went up to the room on the second floor that Kesh was staying in. The hospital staff noted the rather incongruous pair of the traditionally beautiful young Tolyra and the blonde, spiky-haired Naruto with his whisker marks. No one said anything but several people obviously wondered. Tolyra said quietly, "Why are people staring?" Naruto said easily, "They are puzzled by my hybrid appearance. It is normal, so do not trouble yourself." The blue-wearing girl looked uneasy at Naruto's open acceptance of such treatment but finally nodded and led him along to the room Kesh was staying in. She ran her fingers over the door chime and they heard Kesh ask, "Who is it?" in a tired tone. Tolyra poked her head in the room and said, "It's Tolyra and Naruto. Kesh, are you up to having visitors?" Kesh perked up and said, "Oh, yes, please enter." Tolyra. They came in and Kesh looked worn out and sunburned but was obviously pleased to see them. "I bid you both welcome. Thank you for coming. Naruto, it is good to see you again." Naruto nodded and said, "It is good to see you alive and well. I feared we would not meet again." Kesh said, "The only reason I am here is because of your words, Naruto. Please feel free to sit." Naruto and Tolyra both sat and got themselves and Kesh some tea out of the food replicator in the room. Tolyra said, "This is surprisingly good for tea out of a replicator." "I always prefer mine home brewed," said Naruto. "Tell me, Kesh, how goes your recovery? I wasn't able to help you like I wanted, and I didn't see the full extent of your injuries." Kesh sighed. "The leg bone is fully repaired but it will be another week before all the muscles are healed. I also am being treated for bad sunburn." "It is to be expected," said Naruto. "At midday the sun in the forge is fearsome. That is why one should wear loose robes that can easily be put on or removed." "Is that why you had those old traveler's clothes, Naruto?" asked Kesh. "Arev said you were wearing rags and I wondered why." Naruto had amusement in his blue eyes. The traditional traveling robes are far superior to modern clothing in the desert. They are eminently practical and have served our people well for millennia. Our ancestors designed them for the most inhospitable of conditions. They were wise, so it is logical that we follow their example. "You seem to know a lot about the desert, Naruto," said Tolyra. "You were able to help both Kesh and I to survive with your knowledge of the area. More importantly, you gave me the will to endure for my family's sake," said Kesh. "Naruto, you lent me your strength when I was weakest. You will always be a great friend to me." Naruto shook his head. "I thank you, but I only did what was right. I wanted to do more but the rules of the Cawan stayed my hand. I'm sure others would have done the same." "But they didn't," said Kesh in a hurt tone. Tolyra cocked her head to the side and said, "What do you mean, Kesh?" "Arev and a girl I did not know both saw me injured and said nothing," said Kesh. "Arev just shook his head and left me for dead. I thought he was my friend." He looked at Naruto. "When you came along you spoke words of encouragement and advised me to conserve my water. You saved my life even though I treated you so poorly over the years." "I wasn't aware that Arev did this to you, Kesh," said Tolyra with an angry frown. Both Kesh and Naruto were surprised to see such rage roiling off of the gentle and quiet girl. "I am sorry to hear this as well," said Naruto to Kesh as he nervously glanced over at Tolyra. "I'm at ground zero here," thought the blonde concerned. Once Tolyra calmed herself, she and Naruto bid their well wishes to Kesh and went to have a meal in the old quarter. Tolyra returned to her pleasant demeanor, and they enjoyed some clitanta with farati sauce with a side of oolong soup. All in all, they had a nice time and it seemed that Naruto had new friends in Tolyra and in Kesh. Stardate 2265.336 Planet Earth, City of Mojave, California, United States. Shizuka Nadeshiko was at home with her 43-year-old father Keiichi Nadeshiko. He was a big and burly retired Starfleet Marine and had taught his daughter martial arts since she was old enough to walk. "That's my girl," he said enthusiastically as Shizuka nimbly avoided a grappling move. Shizuka started out with karate and judo when she was little, but as the years went by she found that learning virtually any fighting style came naturally to her. Shizuka's mother Seiko was a 37-year-old interior decorator and very feminine. She walked into the family gym and saw her daughter Nun to gently flip her father onto the sparring mat as he laughed. Keiichi and Seiko were still newlyweds when two dear Vulcan friends of Keiichi from Starfleet died in an accident, leaving their baby daughter all alone. Keiichi couldn't even pronounce the baby's Gallic Vulcan name, and since the newborn child had no family to take her in, the young Nadeshiko couple adopted the baby girl as their own and named her Shizuka. They were immensely proud of their child, but there were times that Seiko wished her tomboy of a daughter would be a little more feminine. "I feel like we've raised a fine son," thought Seiko dourly. "If you two are done beating each other up, dinner will be ready in 45 minutes, so clean up," said the petite woman. "Okay, Mom." "Yes, dear." The two fighters answered. The family was soon enjoying some barbecue ribs with all the extras. "Man, I wish I could cook like you, Mom," said Shizuka as she refilled her plate. Seiko smiled. "You might be able to if you applied yourself. You've accomplished everything else you've ever put your mind to. Then again, your dad couldn't cook if his life depended on it. I think you inherited that trait." Seiko looked at the food rapidly disappearing. "I think you've inherited your dad's appetite too." Shizuka blushed slightly. "Sorry, Mom, I've just been burning so many calories exercising lately that I'm always hungry." Keiichi said, "You're still young. You can burn it off." "Shizuka, how did your Starfleet Academy pretests go?" "I've wanted to know that too, Shizuka," said Seiko. "You know I'm not too fond of you joining the military, but at least you have the ambition to be an officer unlike your dad." Keiichi playfully stuck out his tongue at his wife, who promptly returned the gesture. "I'm supposed to get my test results by tonight," said Shizuka. "I haven't checked my messages on my tablet since I got home. Let me go get it." The Vulcan girl darted back to her room. "Shizuka not checking her messages? That's a shocker," quipped Keiichi. "I believe she was locked in mortal combat with you, dear," commented Seiko. Good point," answered Keiichi. "I got it," called Shizuka enthusiastically as she came back from her room. "Well, what does it say, daughter of mine?" asked Keiichi. "Let me open it," said Shizuka as she sat down at the table with her tablet. After a confirmation scan of her retina, Shizuka was given access to her test results. She frowned and said, "Damn it." "What's your score?" asked her father excitedly. "I was 7th, said Shizuka. "I wanted to be first." Seiko's sweat dropped. "You were 7th out of how many, Shizuka?" "I was 7th out of 1,000, said Shizuka in a disappointed tone. Keiichi looked a bit baffled. "Baby girl, you're in the top 1% of 1,000 applicants and you're disappointed?" Shizuka frowned and her eyes narrowed. "They'll cut the number in half on the next test. I'll do better next time." Her mother smiled gently. "You always have been a perfectionist child of mine." Stardate 2265.338, Planet Vulcan, City of Shikar, Terra and Sovar's house. It was a peaceful morning and Naruto was enjoying his weekend. The blonde was reading to his baby sister Taylok as she sat in his lap. That was when he heard the rather loud voice of his father's mother Varric and thought, "Gods, what is she doing here?" He decided to ignore the noise and go back to reading to his little sister. Front room. "So where is my favorite grandson hiding, Sovar?" asked Varric in her usual chatty tone. "We've made all the arrangements to go over to the artisan quarter so young Naruto can be introduced to his lovely cousin Zeren today. She's very eager to meet him." "Who is we, Mother Varric?" asked Terra curtly. "I don't recall Sovar or myself being involved in these arrangements you've described." "Why, myself and Sovar's dear cousin Taurik and his lovely wife Elonat did," said Varric emphatically. "Little Zeren is very optimistic about this meeting. Surely you wouldn't want to disappoint her." Terra said flatly, "Disappointment is a part of life. I don't want my son near that lot of eccentrics," she thought protectively. "Now don't be that way, Terra," said Varric. "It's been years since we all got together, hasn't it, Sovar?" "Taurik has never been the most logical of my cousins," said Sovar. "Last I heard from him he was far more interested in his pastimes than anything else." Varric scoffed. You know Taurik and Elonat are so artistic that they cannot help themselves when the creative spirit touches them. Zeren is looking for her own muse. That could be our young Naruto, added Varric enthused. They are an illogical match, said Terra. Sovar nodded. I must agree with Terra mother. Are you trying to cause a rift in the family, Sovar? Asked Varric. You know how hard it is to work into Torik's schedule it is, and I've done so much work to arrange this. It's clearly logical to follow through for Naruto's sake. Zeren could be just what he needs in his life. Besides, the poor boy has never been bonded, and you told me how disappointed he was all those years ago. Terra sighed. She knew that Sovar was going to cave in because he always tried to avoid making waves with his family. Worse yet, Varric was trying to play on his guilt over the failed bonding arrangements for Naruto all those years ago. Poor Sovar. My husband is too kind-hearted for his own good. It's truly a shame I don't have a phaser on hand to express my true views to Mother Varric about this stunt she's pulled. I will get Naruto and let him decide. A most logical decision, Terra, said Varric. It is for his benefit after all. I swear, Mother Varric is one of the most illogical Vulcans I have ever met, grumbled Terra to herself mentally as she went to find Naruto. Terra soon found Naruto reading to the obviously captivated Taylok. I hate to interrupt this. Naruto and Taylok both look so pleased together. Naruto, Mother Varric wishes for your opinion on meeting your cousin Zeren. She's Torik's daughter. Taurik the artist? Asked Naruto with uncertainty in his voice. Seeing his mother nod, the blonde boy asked, Why would I want to meet her? Terra said tiredly, Mother Varric thinks that you might make a good bonded pair. She saw the questions racing through her son's big blue eyes and said, I wouldn't even consider it, but Mother Varric is guilting your father again. Naruto got a resigned look on his face. I suppose it would be logical to meet these people for father's sake then. The blonde came out in the front room and said, I understand you have arranged a meeting for me, Lady Varric? You know you should call me grandmother now, Naruto, said Varric in a reassuring tone. I'm far more comfortable addressing you as you always wanted me to in the past, Lady Varric. Naruto's blue eyes were set in cold stone. Varric said pleasantly, Now don't be that way, young Nar. I believe you wanted to explain this meeting, Mother Varric? Said Terra. Varric tried to lock eyes with Terra but found her daughter-in-law's onyx-eyed stare was far too much to challenge. She turned to Naruto and said, Your father's cousin Taurik and I were discussing his lovely daughter Zeren and how she is the same age as you. She is also unbonded due to unfortunate circumstances like yourself. It seems very logical that you two should meet and see if you aren't as compatible as we believe you are. Naruto's eyes crackled with chakra energy. He was not pleased. Since the arrangements have already been made, it seems logical that I should meet this person to avoid unnecessary conflict. His voice was flat as plain geometry. Varric said, That is a most logical and mature answer, my grandson. I'm quite sure you will find Zeren to be a very interesting young lady. Naruto was soon in the family hovercraft traveling separately from Varric, who planned to take them all in her own vehicle. Sovar was driving and said, I don't expect this to go well at all, Naruto. I realize you are making a sacrifice for the sake of family unity. You are a good son. Naruto felt bad for his father. Do not trouble yourself over this, father. I will meet this person and simply act indifferent. From what you've said in the past, these particular cousins are best avoided. Indeed they are, said Sovar and Terra as one. City of Shikar, Artisan Quarter, Taurik and Elone's home, art studio. Naruto was led to a very large home, art studio surrounded by abstract and bizarre art, the likes of which he'd never seen in the yard. Varric was eagerly explaining that Taurik and Elonat were both artists and served as each other's muses. Naruto thought the place was peculiar and creepy. The forge's symmetry, thought the blonde. This place is the definition of asymmetry. How disturbing and illogical. Varric interrupted Naruto's train of thought by saying, It would be so fortuitous if you and Zeren likewise inspired each other. Naruto absent-mindedly nodded as he continued to look at the strangeness around him. The door of the house opened to Varric's gentle knock, and a large Vulcan man with multicolored hair and a strange asymmetrical haircut opened the door. In polite Vulcan society, it was unheard of to color your hair for any reason. The green and red highlights in the man's brown hair made Sovar and his family nearly drop their jaws in shock. Welcome, boomed the man. This was Taurik. Sovar thought to himself, He looks even worse than I remember. Tara covered her baby daughter's eyes and stared. I'd forgotten about this horror show. Naruto stared in disbelief. Hello young one, you must be Naruto. I'm your cousin Taurik, said the big man. Taurik invited them all in and they found the inside of the house was even wilder than the outside. Ilonat is doing Zeren's hair so there'll be a few minutes. Please come in and sit down, said Taurik congenially. Young Naruto soon realized that this man liked talking as much as his father's mother Varric did. The chattering noise these two make is unbelievable, he thought in horror. He also realized that Varric and Taurik were doing all of the talking while Naruto's parents sat in silence and nodded occasionally. Soon a rather beautiful Vulcan woman came out dressed in absolutely blinding yellow and red robes. Her hair was cut normally but had white vertical stripes throughout it. She was completely silent, and her makeup made her look like her eyes were slanted and cat-like. Taurik said, Naruto, this is my most beauteous wife Ilonat. Ilonat. This is cousin Sovar's son Naruto. Ilonat bowed silently and motioned grandly back towards the doorway she just entered through. There stood a beautiful girl that seemed to be a miniature Ilonat. She was dressed entirely in black robes and her long jet black hair and onyx eyes contrasted with her porcelain skin. Allow me to introduce our glorious treasure, Zeren, said Taurik proudly. Zeren bowed dramatically and then glided across the floor to where Naruto was sitting. She bowed again to Naruto and said in a silky voice, I am Zeren. It is an honor to meet you cousin Naruto. She stared at Naruto very intensely. Naruto stood up awkwardly and bowed before he said uneasily, hello cousin. I am Naruto. It is an honor to meet you as well. What a strange girl. Zeren reached out and gripped Naruto's face as if she was going to attempt a mind meld. Naruto's eyes widened and she ran her thumbs over his whisker marks on his cheeks and her fingers through his spiky blonde locks. So feral, so untamed, said the girl silkily. Surely like a thunderbolt in the desert. Tell me Naruto. You have a foreign name. What does it mean? She was staring deeply into his eyes in an unnerving way. Naruto said very uncomfortably, my name means Maelstrom. The strange girl's jaw dropped as her hands fell to her sides. I am so inspired. I must paint. She dashed back to her room in a flash. Varric and Taurik seemed thrilled and Ilonat nodded in silent approval. Naruto robotically turned to his parents and said in an emotionless tone, it is time to leave. The look of shock in his eyes was more than enough to convince Tara and Sovar to hit the road. Tara nodded at her son and said to Taurik and Ilonat, thank you for welcoming us into your home. It seems Naruto is inspired as well. Inspired to leave anyway. I know I am. Feeling that was as good an excuse as any, Sovar bowed and said, live long and prosper my cousins. With that Naruto and his family speedily went back to the hovercraft and went home as fast as was legally possible. Stardate 2265.348 Starbase 17. Personal log of Commodore Eric Grayson. Much to the shock of the crew of the Excalibur, the 11-year-old Samui has easily adapted to our technology and is absolutely brilliant. You would think she was raised with our technological level. Our chief medical officer Dr. Cass has confirmed she is superior to normal humans in every way just like the history books tell us. She is smarter, stronger, faster and more resistant to disease. When Dr. Cass inoculated her against modern diseases her body had completely acclimated within mere hours. She hasn't shown any particular inclinations towards conquest or flaunting her superiority though she does use the phrase superior normally in reference to her genetics. She is fascinated by Earth's history including the eugenics wars. Her phrase was she wanted to see things from the perspective of the winning side. All in all Samui is a fascinating child. To my own disbelief I am kind of sorry to see her go. Starfleet Command is taking her to Earth where she can grow up and integrate into modern society with some appropriate foster parents. Samui had her things together and bid the Commodore and crew of the USS Excalibur farewell before she went to her new caretakers that were taking her to Earth. She said, thank you all for rescuing me and bringing me here. I believe humanity is meant to sail the stars. Perhaps I'll join Starfleet in a few years as it seems to be a superior path. It would be cool if I could see you all again. Later. With that she marched off with purpose in her step. Lieutenant Sandy Talbot chuckled. I guess everything is cool with little Samui. I hope she turns out all right. She seems like a good, smart kid after all. Dreyfus nodded. If she joins Starfleet Academy in a few years, she'll graduate at the top of her class. Of that I have no doubt, agreed the Commodore. Terra and Sovar had spent the last week avoiding the advances of Taurik and Elonat for Naruto to spend more time with Zarin, and things were finally settling back into a routine. It was morning, and before school Naruto was doing his usual Vishan warm-up routine to loosen up his body and get his blood pumping. He was joined by his little sister Taylok, who loved to dance with her big brother as he went through his precise and fluid motions in the backyard. Watching her baby daughter flailing around, dancing with her serene son was one of Terra's secret pleasures. Taylok was absolutely adorable, and Terra wanted to rush outside to dance with her baby girl. Years of emotional control prevented such outrageous behavior, but it didn't stop Terra from joining them with her own Vishan routine when she had time. Taylok was just so cute. Shikar Primary School. After his morning Vishan workout, Naruto went to school, where he was greeted by Talyra and his new friend Kesh. Kesh had just returned from the hospital earlier that week and genuinely wanted to get to know Naruto, since they'd never interacted all that much before. Naruto was pleased to have friends, but at the same time he noticed Arev's angry and jealous glares at him. The blonde figured Kesh could handle himself, but Arev had been looking murderously at Talyra, and Naruto was concerned for her safety. Talyra made no bones about giving Arev the cold shoulder since the Cawan, or the fact she was associating with Naruto since then. It was actually a big subject in the classroom. "Has Talyra broken her bond with Arev?" whispered one of the girls. "I wonder if she is going to be with Naruto from now on." "I don't know," whispered another girl back. "I heard Naruto saved Arev's life during the Cawan." Kesh said so, and Arev was angry about it. He was also angry at Talyra because she passed the ritual and he failed. It's no wonder Talyra wants to distance herself from Arev. Such displays of emotionalism and ungratefulness are vulgar. Kesh says he is friends with Naruto now and that he owes Naruto his life. For Arev to act the way he has towards Naruto and Talyra is unthinkable. "It is little wonder Arev didn't pass the test of maturity. It is clear he isn't ready for adulthood," whispered the first girl. "I can hear everything you are saying," thought Naruto dourly. "Gossip is not a good thing. Oh well. I suppose these rumors put me in a positive light for a change." At lunch Naruto was sitting with Talyra, who brought some extra desserts to share with Naruto after they finished their lunches. More rumors started as a result. Naruto was learning different things about Talyra. She was a very neat and orderly girl that couldn't understand the logic behind Naruto being treated differently because he was born a hybrid. Naruto appreciated her views but felt that the majority of Vulcans did not follow the same ideals. Talyra was also an accomplished player of the Kaathyra 1 and liked to sing. She'd been taking private music lessons for years actually. Naruto had to wonder about why he had climbed up so fast in the social circles since he passed his Cawan. It was a very important ritual, but all Vulcans had to do it eventually. He had asked his mother, who replied, "The reason it has had such an impact is because you are a hybrid, my son. Only one other hybrid has survived to pass the Cawan, and that is Ambassador Sarek and Lady Amanda's son Spock. Many in our extended family didn't believe you would survive." Naruto accepted his mother's explanation but felt it was highly illogical to assume he would die during the Cawan ritual just because he is different. Terra and Sovar's house. Naruto arrived home from school that afternoon and saw a vehicle there he did not recognize. He figured it was another visitor from the Vulcan Science Academy to see his mother. Coming into his house, Naruto took his sandals off and announced, "Mother, I am home." The blonde was surprised to see his mother shoot out of the kitchen with Taylok in tow. "Welcome home, Naruto. My mother is here and I ask that you keep an eye on Taylok in the back until she departs." Taylok held up her arms and said, "Nar, up." Taylok hadn't quite gotten the name Naruto down yet. Naruto picked up Taylok and said, "How are you today, little one? Let's head back to our rooms and do something together." "What is mother's mother doing here? They haven't been on speaking terms since before I was born. I don't even know what the woman looks like." Naruto was very puzzled but took Taylok back to his room to find something to entertain her with. Terra went back into the kitchen to talk to her mother Sissa. Sissa was a very young-looking woman that easily could have passed off as her daughter's sister or twin. She had the same onyx eyes and jet black hair as well as Terra's delicate facial features. Like her child, Sissa was quite stunning. Sissa said, "You could have at least introduced me to my own grandchild." Naruto's mother simply said, I see no logical reason to do so. You've never been in his life before, so why start now? Sissa sighed. I told you I've come to make amends, Terra. When I heard Naruto passed his Cawan, I was very pleased and thought it was time to bridge this gap between us. I have missed you, my child. I want to be a part of your life again. Is that too much for a mother to ask? Terra's onyx eyes were set in stone. You ended our relationship years ago. The elder of the two frowned. Must you be so stubborn like your father was? I will admit it. I was wrong. I was completely wrong. Your father died in the military and I am a pacifist. You know I was shattered inside when you told me you wanted to go into Starfleet like he did, don't you understand? You've moved on, said Terra. You have remarried successfully and have had 3 children since then. I've never met any of them. There is no reason you need me in your life now. You told me to stay away from your new family and I have obeyed your wishes. Do you resent the fact I've remarried? Asked Sissa. You have siblings that would be honored to meet you. They hold you in the greatest esteem for your achievements in science. Terra cut her mother off. I have no resentments about you remarrying. Father would have said the same. Frankly, I'm surprised your 3 children have even heard of me. Go back to Neath City and forget about me. Must you be so cold? Asked Sissa. Do you take pleasure in seeing your mother suffer? Terra's face was marred by an angry scowl. You are the one that put yourself in this situation. Don't accuse me of making you suffer. I doubted myself for years after what you said and did to me. And I'm trying to make up for it, said Sissa in a raised voice. All I'm asking for is for you to let me make it all up to you, Terra. You are my daughter and there is an empty space where you should be. Please let me back into your life, Terra. I want to know my grandchildren and to see what a fine woman my daughter has become. Terra had tears in her eyes. She said in a low tone. I will discuss this matter with Sovar tonight. You are an illogical and selfish woman. Come back tomorrow at noon and not a second before and I will give you my decision. Now leave. Sissa looked crestfallen but said, I will come back tomorrow then. She pulled out a small package. This was your father's. I want Naruto to have it for his Cawan. Please accept it. Terra wanted to scream but angrily snatched up the package anyway. She then silently showed her mother to the door. Sissa was about to say goodbye but found her daughter had already slammed the door behind her. Naruto was sitting in the floor with Taylok as she played with his Calto set. The little girl was helping her big brother as she stuck rods together at various angles much to her delight. Naruto raised an eyebrow when he heard the door slam and Taylok jumped at the noise. Nar? Asked Taylok. The blonde said, I think mother just closed the door, Taylok. It's none of our concern. Mama pay Calto? Asked the little girl in her baby talk. Naruto sensed a feeling of heaviness in the air from the front room and said, perhaps mother will play later on. I think she's busy right now. The next morning Naruto woke up for school as usual and saw that Taylok was up bright and early but his parents weren't. Father and mother must be sleeping in. I hope mother is all right. She seemed very bothered last night. Taylok started making noise to get Naruto's attention and soon he had changed her and gotten her dressed to help out his parents. Let's go have some breakfast, Taylok. I think mother and father are sleeping in. Terra awoke lying in her husband's arms. Sovar had taken care of her all last night both physically and mentally. They talked a lot and made love until they were exhausted. Terra saw Sovar's hair was all disheveled in the morning light. She had a tiny smile on her face as she played with his bangs. Sovar's eyes opened and he said, Good morning, Terra. The onyx-eyed beauty brushed her long black hair back and said, I didn't mean to wake you. Sovar touched his fingers to hers affectionately and he said, You didn't wake me. Naruto and Taylok have been up a while and they woke me up. Her eyes widened and she said, I need to get up and take care of Taylok. Sovar gently planted a kiss on her lips and said, I took today off from work today. Let's lie here a while and talk together. If Naruto needs help he will knock on the door. Terra laid her head down on Sovar's shoulder and said, I don't know what to do about mother. Tell your husband about it. He can be a good listener from what I've heard, said Sovar as he wrapped his arms around his wife. Terra said sadly, My mother Sissa wishes to enter my life again. She came all the way from Neath City because she somehow heard about Naruto's passing the Cawan ritual. My mother asked me to stay out of her life when I decided to join Starfleet. She did not even attend our wedding, I cannot fathom why she wants to open such a door after she so thoroughly ended our relationship. Sovar rubbed his wife's back gently. Perhaps Sissa has been keeping tabs on us all this time. I don't know who would be in a position to inform her though. To know of Naruto's cause one, it would have to be someone in close contact with us. Terra and Sovar looked into each other's eyes for a few minutes before they came to the exact same conclusion. Mother Varric, she would know all these things, said Terra with disbelief in her voice. It is a logical conclusion, groaned Sovar. She and Mother Sissa always were good friends and did arrange our marriage. He sighed. Once again, it seems my mother defies rationality. She is well aware that we have had no contact with Mother Sissa for well over a decade. The onyx-eyed beauty hugged her husband. You are the only one in your family that is fully sane, Sovar. I still cannot fathom how you are related to your mother. He gave her a minimal smile and said, I'll take that as a compliment, my wife. Perhaps the rumors I was adopted are true. Naruto would have sworn he heard his mother laughing as he and Taylok ate breakfast but dismissed it as too unlikely to be possible. Sovar soon got up while Terra took a morning shower. He was glad to see his wife in better spirits again. Sovar saw Naruto was in the backyard watching over Taylok as she danced around him doing her own interpretation of the Vishan exercises her big brother did. Seeing her father was there, Taylok trotted over and greeted him. Fa da, nar dance, she said exuberantly. Picking up his little daughter, Sovar watched as his son completed his morning routine to perfection. Yes, Naruto is good at dancing, isn't he, Taylok? She eagerly agreed and Naruto came over to Sovar. Good morning, father, said the blonde. Is mother doing better? Your mother is going to be fine, said Sovar. She is going through a stressful time due to her mother Sissa. Things will work themselves out, Naruto. Naruto asked, then you are staying home with her today? Seeing his father nod, the blonde visibly relaxed. I am glad. I can go to school without worry then. Sovar looked at Naruto proudly. I'm glad you are responsible like your mother. I think I can keep things under control while you are at school. Naruto grinned shyly and got his things together for school. He soon bid his father and sister a good day and headed out. Terra soon came out after her shower and asked, did Naruto already leave? Her husband nodded. He asked me to tell you he would be thinking about you today. Sovar pondered for a moment and said, we have been blessed with a fine boy. Terra leaned into Sovar and said, I couldn't ask for a better son. Shikar Primary School. Naruto was on his way to class when he was stopped by a Rev in the courtyard of the school. The larger boy growled, stay away from Talyra. She belongs to me. The blonde wanted to smack a Rev but resisted the urge. He said calmly, Talyra is her own person. You do not own her. She should be free to associate with whoever she wishes. Naruto noticed a crowd was quietly forming. If you don't stay away from Talyra, I'll make you stay away, you half-breed, said a Rev threateningly. I beat you bloody years ago and I'm not afraid to do it again. Naruto frowned and said, you'll regret it if you cross me again. The crowd was whispering amongst themselves and the blonde motioned to the group around them. You are making a spectacle of yourself, a Rev. A Rev saw Talyra enter the courtyard and narrowed his eyes at her. Then I'll just use this opportunity to prove I'm better. The large boy lashed out at Naruto twice but the blonde dodged. Stand still, yelled a Rev. The blonde caught a Rev's wrist and flipped the larger boy over his shoulder, causing a Rev to hit the ground hard on his back. But the bully wouldn't quit and slowly rose back up. Naruto said to his classmates, don't just stand there. Call an instructor. Two of them headed inside the school. A Rev tried to gracelessly tackle Naruto to use his larger size to an advantage. Talyra called out in warning to Naruto as the blonde easily evaded the clumsy attack. She's mine, roared a Rev. The blonde hybrid had enough. Using a brutal Kuriel IFLA spinning mid-kick, Naruto sent a Rev flying and followed up with a Vishan neck strike that knocked the lummox unconscious. What a lousy way to start the day, thought Naruto. Talyra came over and asked, are you all right, Naruto? Were you hurt in any way? I'm fine, Talyra, said Naruto. I just wish this situation could have been avoided. I wonder if he is disturbed. Several instructors arrived shortly afterwards and Instructor Tapartha asked for an explanation from Naruto first. So in short, you rendered him unconscious after he repeatedly tried to do harm to you, said Instructor Tapartha. Seeing Naruto nod, she said, I will question the others who witnessed this event, Naruto. Since you are unharmed, there is no reason you can't go on into the classroom to your learning station. Tara and Sovar's house at precisely noon. Sarissa arrived at her daughter's house feeling very tense and worried. She knocked on the door and to her surprise it was Sovar who answered the door. He looked at her for a moment and said, "Hello Mother Sarissa. It has been a long time. It surprised me to hear of your visit yesterday." "It is good to see you well, Sovar," said Sarissa as calmly as she could. "Is Tara willing to see me?" She was wringing her hands nervously. Sovar nodded and said, "Tara is in the kitchen. Please come in, but no, I'll be here for Tara's sake." Sarissa bowed slightly and said, "Of course. Thank you for inviting me into your home." Taylok came trotting in and held her arms up to Sovar. "Up," she said. Sovar scooped up his little girl who squealed happily. Looking at her grandchild, Sarissa said, "She looks just like Tara at that age." "You've missed a lot," said Sovar. "I trust you know about things from my mother Varric?" Sarissa looked surprised and said, "She told you?" Sovar shook his head. "No, she simply was the most logical choice. My mother is quite talkative after all." "As always, Tara is 3 steps ahead of me," thought Sarissa. "I hope you and Tara aren't offended by my prying." "I was simply surprised," admitted Sovar. "I believe Tara will have to answer for herself though." Sovar adjusted little Taylok in his arms. "I'll be out here. Tara is waiting for you at the kitchen table." Feeling like she was headed towards the proverbial gallows, Sarissa went in to see her daughter. Tara looked dispassionately at her mother. "You came back. I am surprised." It was a statement that took Sarissa off guard. "You are my daughter," said Sarissa. "I want to rebuild what we lost." Tara said, "Please be seated and we will talk about it." Shikar Primary School. Naruto was working on some quantum physics questions as his classmates filtered in, having answered the questions of the instructors about the fight between Naruto and Arev. Instructor Tapartha said to him, "Naruto, you have been summoned to Headmaster Sarda's office. I trust you to be on your best behavior." The blonde hybrid had a sinking feeling in his stomach and nodded. "I shall go there straight away, instructor." "Thank you." Naruto quickly made his way to the 3rd floor where the headmaster's office was. Of all the days for this to happen, it had to be when mother and father are busy with mother's estranged mother Sarissa. The blonde thought glumly. Naruto knocked on the headmaster's office door and was bid to enter. He gave the Vulcan salute and said, "I come to serve." "Your service honors us," replied Headmaster Sarda. Sarda was a graying but very distinguished-looking Vulcan. He had his secretary in the room beside his desk. She was also gray-haired and looked very strict. "Come in and sit, young Naruto. I am Sarda and this is my senior secretary Kav." The woman nodded and Naruto bowed. "It is an honor to meet you both." Naruto quickly sat in front of the headmaster's desk feeling distinctly uncomfortable. Sarda steepled his fingers in front of him. "I understand there was an altercation between you and young Arev, who is a classmate of yours. I saw the end of it when you rendered him unconscious. I have read the reports from Instructor Tapartha as well as your classmates who witnessed the event. Still, it seems prudent for me to listen to your side of the situation directly from you." Naruto spent the next 45 minutes explaining the situation to the headmaster and his secretary. They asked questions when appropriate and seemed to be very reasonable people to Naruto, even though he was nervous as could be. Finally, Headmaster Sarda said, "This concludes our interview, young Naruto. I do have a personal question purely out of curiosity, however." Sarda's secretary Kav raised an eyebrow. "I will answer as best I can, of course," said Naruto. Sarda had a slight twinkle in his eye that took Naruto off guard. "I am most curious about the martial arts you employed during your fight." Kav's face fell. The headmaster said, "Unless I'm mistaken, that was a Kareel Ifla spin kick followed fluidly by a Vishan neck strike. The moves are both potentially deadly, yet you used them in a flawless and non-lethal way." "I am a 5th level adept too in both Vishan and Kareel Ifla, sir," explained Naruto. "Using those moves in a non-lethal way is a simple task." Sarda's eyes widened. "A 5th level adept, not learner?" asked the headmaster. Seeing Naruto nod, Sarda asked, "Where did you learn to have such skill so early in life?" Naruto answered, "My father is a teacher at the Vulcan Institute for the Defensive Arts. He is a 6th level master at Kareel Ifla and a 1st level master of Vishan. Likewise, my mother is a 2nd level master at Vishan." They have been training me since I was 5 years old. Sarda said, even with that you must be a prodigy at the martial arts. You switched between two styles effortlessly. Secretary Kov wanted to face palm. Apparently Headmaster Sarda was a martial arts nut. Tara and Sovar's house for all the drama going on with Naruto at school. Sovar listening to the highly emotional, by Vulcan standards, conversation between his wife and mother-in-law had been taxing on the man. Sovar was well aware that Sissa had deeply hurt Tara but was genuinely trying to make amends. On the other hand, hearing the pain in his wife's voice made him want to throw Sissa out of the house and tell her to never come back. Eventually Tara agreed that the path of reconciliation was the most logical solution. Sissa hugged her daughter and said, "You will not regret this, my daughter. I am so proud of you. We can overcome this together." Tara just nodded. Sissa asked, "May I stay and meet my grandson Naruto?" Varric said he is a very special and handsome boy. Tara raised an eyebrow analytically. Mother Varric said that, perhaps she had too much Vulcan port. I am surprised given her general attitude towards my son. Really? Asked Sissa. Since he passed his Cawan, Varric has only spoken of him in glowing terms. I was under the impression she is extremely proud of him. I can't fathom Mother Varric's logic, said Tara as she led her mother out into the front room where Taylok was sleeping peacefully in Sovar's arms. Sissa said, "Taylok is such a beautiful child, Tara. I feel like I'm looking at you when you were that age. You were always so busy and filled with curiosity. I wonder if she is the same." "I believe it is safe to say she is," said Sovar quietly. "She is definitely her mother's daughter." Naruto soon made it home looking a bit taxed. Headmaster Sarda had talked his ear off about the martial arts and very much wanted to meet Sovar. The blonde came inside and was greeted by his father, to whom he silently handed his datapad. Sovar read the message from the headmaster with raised eyebrows. "Naruto finally put that boy Arev in his place, and the headmaster is very enthused and wants to meet me, having witnessed Naruto's exceptional skill in the martial arts." "Naruto, do you know what this document says?" "I could speculate, but I haven't read it," said Naruto in a tired tone. "The headmaster said it was to be read by you first, father." Sovar ruffled his son's spiky hair. "Let's wait until later to tell your mother. She's had quite an eventful day as it is." "How did things go?" asked Naruto. "Your mother has chosen to reconcile with her mother Sissa," said Sovar. "Sissa is very eager to meet you. She apparently heard many good things about you from my mother." Naruto raised his eyebrow in the exact same fashion Tara always did. "Lady Varric said something positive about me. I can't fathom her logic." Sovar gave a tiny smile, much to Naruto's surprise. He said, "You are truly your mother's son, Naruto." The blonde boy soon met his grandmother Sissa, who seemed to be beaming at him. She presented him with a gift for his Cawan. Naruto opened it and saw it was a holographic picture of Tara as a child standing and holding hands with Sissa and her father. Tara was only 5 at the time. Said Sissa fondly, "Your mother was brilliant even then. I understand you are as well, my grandson." Naruto looked fascinated at the picture of his mother as a little girl. "Thank you, grandmother Sissa. Taylok looks just like mother did." "Indeed she does," agreed Sissa with approval in her voice. "You are quite a handsome young man yourself." Naruto was pleasantly surprised to meet his grandmother Sissa. Compared to Varric, she was a very logical woman. Stardate 2265.354 Tara and Sovar's house. It was morning and Naruto was relaxing at home since it was the weekend. He normally was very industrious, but given how crazed the week had been, the blonde hybrid was just enjoying the peace and quiet. Arev had been suspended from classes for the time being so he could work out his anger issues. Therapy was in order and it was quite embarrassing for Arev's family. Perhaps the most embarrassing was the entire student body of the primary school knew about it. As it turned out, Naruto actually was held in a very positive light for his actions. Given how out of control and aggressive Arev was, Naruto had to render him unconscious before he could do harm to others. In spite of the fact Vulcans abhorred violence by nature, it was felt that Naruto did what had to be done. The blonde was interrupted from his musings by his mother tapping on the doorway into his room. "Lost in thought, my son?" asked Tara. She actually was rather pleased with how things had been with her mother and all. Naruto shook his head and said, "I'm sorry, mother, I was just reflecting on this past week." Tara gave a minimal smile. You have a guest. Your friend Tolyra is here. She seems quite eager to see you. If I didn't know better I'd say my mother is teasing me, thought Naruto dubiously. I'll be right there, said the blonde. Tolyra was practically glowing with happiness when Naruto came out to the front room. Naruto, I got 2 tickets to the theater this afternoon. Would you like to go with me? Said the blue-wearing girl. Seeing his parents nod, Naruto said, I will accompany you. What is playing? It was the first of many outings that Tolyra and Naruto would go on. Stardate 2266.014 Volcana Rer. A few weeks later, during the vacation month between school trimesters, Naruto and his family went with Sovar's mother Varric up to the Grand Vulcan merchant city of Volcana Rer to meet Naruto's 12-year-old cousin Metana for the purposes of a possible bonding. Naruto had avoided Zaren like the plague and wanted to camp with his father in the forge instead of making this trip, but Varric wouldn't let it drop, so off they went. The meeting with Metana, a plain but attractive girl from an affluent background, had been less than successful. She basically threw a fit at the idea of being bonded to any sort of hybrid and informed Naruto she wanted nothing to do with him, ever. Varric was terribly embarrassed, as were Metana's parents. Naruto simply said that he and Metana obviously weren't a suitable match and it would be logical to leave it at that. Varric stayed behind to smooth things over, and Tara concluded that the family should take a quick tour of Volcana Rer since they were already there. The honest truth was Naruto's little family was immensely relieved that Varric's quest to find Naruto a mate was theoretically over. There was no way she could recover after losing that much face in front of her son and his family, or so they hoped. As they looked in various shops, Naruto found all of the foreign goods in the merchant city to be quite fascinating. Like most Vulcans, Naruto felt no need to amass a lot of goods, but all the different items were very interesting to look at. It was then that Tara saw an old friend from Starfleet and called out to him. Inoichi. Inoichi Yamanaka, called Tara over the noise of the crowds. A rather tall man with longish, wavy blonde hair and intense blue eyes immediately sprang to attention. Commander Tara? He asked in surprise. Tara motioned her family to follow her and she said to Inoichi, It is good to see you, Inoichi. You needn't address me as commander now that we are leading civilian lives. It has been a long time. Inoichi relaxed and said, Old habits die hard. It is good to see you too. Calm, Tara. My family and I are here on a business vacation. My wife is in the trade business for Betazoid goods. What are you doing now? I'm raising my children with my husband and working for the Vulcan Science Academy to further my research, said Tara. Allow me to introduce my family. This is my husband Sovar and these are my children Naruto and Taylok. Naruto is 11 and Taylok will be 3 in the next few weeks. Inoichi smiled in a friendly way and said, I'm Inoichi Yamanaka from the planet Betaz. We are looking into joining the Federation soon. 3 and I was an exchange officer on the USS Republic with Tara. Betazoids are powerful telepaths and Inoichi specializes in psychology, explained Tara. Inoichi was a great help to our crew. Inoichi quietly observed Tara and Sovar and found their thoughts to be serene and very orderly, as with most Vulcans. Little Taylok was very curious and showed the same thought patterns that her parents had honed over the years. Then there was Naruto. Inoichi asked, Young Naruto here must be the result of the situation on Tory Prime IV, correct? Tara nodded and said, He is my fine son. Inoichi could sense Naruto's thought patterns were very Vulcan, but he also felt a massive, underlying power that could only be described as something very primal. Inoichi soon introduced his wife Ayano and their 12-year-old daughter Ino to Tara and her family. As the Betazoids had a matriarchy, Ayano seemed to hold the power in the family. They agreed to have a meal together to catch up on things. As their parents talked, Ino said, So you've got blonde hair and blue eyes. That's pretty unusual here on Vulcan. She twirled her blonde ponytail and said, Of course, I've got blue eyes too, so I'm an oddball myself. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Why would blue eyes be considered odd? Ino smiled. You don't get out much, do you? All pure Betazoids are born with black irises like my mom. Dad's grandfather was a standard human and somehow those recessive blue eyes got passed down. Genetics are odd, huh? Genetics can be predicted easily enough, but hybrid specimens sometimes exhibit unusual qualities, said Naruto sagely. Ha ha, you talk like an old science professor, Naruto, said the sassy blonde girl. Terra raised an eyebrow as the two preteens interacted. It was pretty obvious that Naruto was a bit baffled by Ino's exuberant personality. It was also obvious that Ino was having a great time. Ino said, "I'm planning to go into Starfleet like Daddy did. Of course, that is assuming Beta Z is admitted into the Federation." Naruto asked curiously, "What sort of capacity would you be serving in?" "I'd want to go into the medical field. Xenobiology and psychology are my best subjects in school," replied the feisty blonde. "Hey, that wasn't a nice thought." Naruto raised his eyebrows and Ino said, "You just thought that I didn't seem smart enough to be a doctor." "You just read my mind?" asked Naruto. Ino spouted, "Obviously." Naruto's eyes crackled with blue chakra and he thought, "Stay out of my head, Ino." Ino was nearly bowled over by the power and her parents both turned to Naruto whose eyes had faded back to normal. "Is everything all right, children?" asked Ayano worriedly. Naruto said peacefully, "Everything is fine. We were just discussing boundaries." Ino and her parents all sweat dropped though Ino was amazed at the sheer energy involved. "So what are you planning?" asked Ino who recovered miraculously fast. "Are you going into Starfleet like your mama?" "Starfleet is an option to consider," said Naruto. "I'm going to the Vulcan Science Academy first to see if it is a suitable path for me." The kids talked about space travel for some time before Ayano called for Ino. "It is time to go, Ino. Say farewell to your new friend." Ino nodded and stood up. "Until we meet again," she said with a wave. Naruto gave the traditional Vulcan salute and said, "Live long and prosper." "Well, that boy certainly was an interesting one," said Ayano. "He seems calm on the surface but it seems the spirit of a powerful predator lurks within him." "I think he's kinda neat," replied Ino with a giggle. Inoichi just shook his head at his daughter's antics. "So what did you think of your first interactions with a non-Vulcan child your age, Naruto?" asked Terra. "She seems fairly typical for a baseline human despite the fact she's a betazoid. Her tendency to change moods and subjects rapidly was most baffling and didn't follow any sort of logic that I could ascertain," said Naruto. "She did not seem to possess any ill will but it was all very confusing." Terra said, "Imagine being on a ship full of people like that. Starfleet is an experience." "How did you keep your sanity?" asked the blonde boy. His mother answered sagely, "It took lots and lots of meditation at times." 2 years had passed rapidly for Naruto and his friends. The nearly 13-year-old boy and his family were taking a vacation with Talira's family as well as Kesh's. The three friends had become close as time had passed and their parents had become acquainted as a result. They'd come all the way east of Shikar City to the Plains of Gold to ride Gerald's one on a ranch. None of the children had ever seen one of the horse-like creatures before in person so it was a novel experience for all of them. The 4-year-old Taylok's eyes were wide with fascination as they walked over to the ranch where all the Geralds were kept. Looking over the fence at the blue and black zebra-striped animals, the little girl pointed at young foal and said to Terra, "Look mama, a baby one. Can I ride the baby?" Terra looked fondly at her daughter and said, "Let's talk to the ranch owners and see about finding a little one for you. I haven't been out here since I was a teenager. I was just as fascinated with them as Taylok. They're such beautiful animals." Sovar was standing beside Naruto as the blonde carefully examined each Gerald with a critical eye. He'd been reading about the creatures and their habits in detail for the last 2 weeks. "So our ancestors of the Mafau clan rode these noble creatures and mastered them in the ancient past. Fascinating. What do you think, father?" Placing his hand on Naruto's shoulder, Sovar said, "The Mafau blood in your veins is from your mother's side. My side of the family are distant cousins that were mainly artisans. I wonder if you and Taylok will have a flair for riding. I'm mediocre at best. With the balance and coordination you have with the martial arts that surprises me, father," said Naruto. Sovar shrugged and said, "I think it is more a matter of being able to bond with the Geralds themselves. I've never been that good with animals in general." Naruto nodded as he saw Talira excitedly climb on the back of the Gerald that she had picked to ride. "Watch me, Naruto," said the blue-wearing girl with a wave. The blonde waved back and Kesh came over. "I want to ride that one," he said pointing at one with turquoise stripes. Naruto looked at the Gerald that Kesh was eyeing and said, "That one looks too skittish to me." Kesh asked, "Did your books tell you that, my friend?" The blonde shook his head and said, "I trust my instincts. That animal is feeling uneasy. Soon Taylog was feeding fruit to the little foal that she was so excited about. The rides had been sedate as they were being conducted carefully under the watchful eyes of the ranchers. Everything went smoothly and everyone took a couple of rides safely. Taylog soon had a foal that was small, so she was very excited. It was shaping to be a perfect day of riding until Kesh got to ride the turquoise-striped mare that he was so enamored with. The nervous animal reared up and everyone had to leap clear as the mare shot off into the sunset carrying the hapless Kesh along. "Kesh!" cried out Kesh's parents. Talira and her parents were also panicked. Naruto face-palmed. "Only you, Kesh," thought the blonde morosely. The ranchers were already off in hot pursuit of the runaway mare and her luckless passenger. Within 20 minutes it was apparent that the tired animals the ranchers had were not going to catch Kesh because the mare was frightened and fresh. Naruto said, "We need a fresh animal to catch Kesh or he'll end up on the other side of the plains." The blonde looked at the many Gerals shuffling about and his eyes crackled with chakra. Most of the animals shied away, but Naruto held out his hand to one without a saddle. "Come, my friend," said Naruto. "Will you help me catch my danger-prone friend before he gets himself killed?" One of the elderly ranchers panicked a bit and said, "Young man, that's a breeding stud. He is too wild to ride." The blonde rubbed the nose of the stallion and said, "He is the fastest. He will help me catch that mare." The red-eyed stallion blew steam out of its nostrils and Naruto slipped up on the stallion's bare back smoothly as he would have with a saddle. Naruto placed his palm on the Geral's neck just like he read his ancestors did when they spoke to the animals. "Let's go," said Naruto quietly as he leaned low for speed. The stallion reared up a bit and then took off like a bullet from a gun. Kesh was wide-eyed with panic as his Geral mare barreled along. The boy's braided hair was whipping in the wind behind him. He tried pulling a bit on the reins, but frightened mare just sped up. He didn't realize it, but the ranchers calling after him were being left in the dust. As they crested a large hill, Kesh tried pulling the reins again only to cause the Geral to turn left and start heading down a sharp incline. Minutes later Naruto and his stallion crested the same hill and his Geral came to a halt. Naruto looked down the incline and saw Kesh and the mare traveling unsteady downhill at his left. "Unbelievable," he muttered. Naruto and the stallion both looked right and saw a much safer and shallower incline that looped around to the base of the hill. Naruto gently nudged the stallion to the right with his hand on its neck and the Geral took off like a rocket again. Naruto felt his spiky hair being blown about as the stallion smoothly accelerated. No wonder my clan loved these creatures. This feeling of riding like the wind is completely liberating. The stallion leapt over a small ravine and shot down the path, leaving a trail of dust in its wake. Naruto looked ahead and grinned as the intensity of the adrenaline increased. They arrived at the bottom of the hill as Kesh and his mare ended their perilous trip down the incline. Naruto let the stallion steer himself as they matched speed with the mare. Naruto reached across and roughly gripped the reins of the mare, bringing the frightened animal to a halt. Kesh was hyperventilating as he gripped Naruto's shoulder and felt his heartbeat start slow down. "How is it you get into these situations, Kesh?" asked Naruto in disbelief. "There is no logic in my life," lamented Kesh. Naruto just face-palmed again. Later, the ranch owner said to Naruto, "It defies logic that Vuj too allowed you to ride him, young man. That stallion has always been wild. The only thing I can say is you are a credit to the Mafao clan to do what you did." Naruto said, "I had to save my friend." The old rancher nodded, "Come back if you ever need riding lessons. You have a natural talent for Naruto Mafao." Stardate 2267.260 City of Shikar, Old Quarter. Naruto was having lunch with Talira at the little restaurant in the Old Quarter she was so fond of. They were having her favorite, clitonta with faradi sauce. Naruto also had some oolong soup as a side. "It amazes me that you plan to try out for the Vulcan Science Academy so young, Naruto. Are you sure you aren't rushing things a bit? It doesn't seem very logical to me to go headlong into this." The blonde replied, "My mother went in when she was 15. She says it will be a good exercise to prepare for the future entrance exams. Besides, it will give me 2 years of practice if I intend to get in at 15. Talira drummed her fingers. "Naruto, have you considered what will happen if you pass the entrance exams? That brain of yours has gotten you in trouble before. Sometimes you are too smart for your own good. I personally blame Terra for this." I'm sure my mother would be honored by your words, Lyra, said Naruto with amusement in his blue eyes. The blue-wearing girl said quietly, I don't want you to go away to another school, Naruto. I'll be alone without you. Naruto said, the Vulcan Science Academy is only a few kilometers outside Shikar. It isn't like I'll really be going away. Then you really are trying to get in early? She asked. He sighed. Of course I'm trying. I need to do my best. It wouldn't be logical to not give my all. On the contrary, I don't believe it would be realistic to assume I will gain entry on my first try. As I said, this is for practice as much as anything. Lyra said, but it is possible you could get in. Anything is possible, Lyra, replied Naruto. Will you support me in this endeavor? You are my dear friend. Lyra sighed softly and said, of course I will support you, Naruto. You are my dearest friend. Stardate 2267.290, Terra and Sovar's house on Naruto's 13th birthday. He was old enough to take the entrance exams for the Vulcan Science Academy. The entrance exams were a week later. The blonde got up earlier than usual and studied the practice exams until Terra rose and convinced him that it was logical to stop studying and eat breakfast. After that, she drove Naruto down to her old alma mater, the Vulcan Science Academy. Specifically, she took him to the entrance exam halls. Taara looked proudly at her son. Seeing he needed a bit of encouragement, she said, Naruto, just do your best. If you fail to gain entrance this year, there is no shame in it. Your father, sister and I will all be just as proud of you. She ruffled his spiky blonde hair affectionately and said, now go, my son. Have confidence in yourself. Naruto swallowed the lump in his throat and nodded. I'll do my best, mother. Then he went over and got in line with the, mostly, older applicants. Exam hall. After everyone was assigned a learning station, Naruto focused on his center until he was ready. He placed his fingers on the touch pads of the learning station and the 4 data screens activated. He saw each holographic image come into focus with the Vulcan Science Academy emblem. There was no prelude or explanation film. The computer said in a genderless, emotionless voice, Test applicant 2,267,155, Naruto Mafao. Test battery 1. Begin. Naruto's blue eyes lit up with chakra as every synapse in his young mind roared into a frenzy of activity. Each screen asked different questions in a rapid-fire way as Naruto shot the answers back just as quickly. He soon fell into a rhythm with the machines as he picked out the algorithms of all 4 machines as they sped up and slowed down to throw his thought patterns off. As questions about geography and tectonics shot by on the screens, the blonde young man entered the manual coordinates for a most likely occurrence for a volcanic eruption on the opposite screen. All 4 screens stopped at once and the computer said, Test battery 1 completed. 1 standard hour has elapsed. Stand by for results. Naruto took a deep breath and braced himself for the numbers. Geography. 100% geology, 99% tectonics, 100% archaeology, 100%. The blonde young man grit his teeth. Damn it, I missed a question. Naruto didn't have time to dwell further on the subject as the computer screens focused again on the Academy emblem and the computer said, Test applicant 2,267,155, Naruto Mafao. Test battery 2. Begin. Proctor room. Terra was up in the test proctor room. She wasn't actually proctoring but rather she was observing as a scientist. Her specific study, Naruto's hybrid brainwave functions. My son's brainwaves are simply marvelous. He is currently only using 50% of his thought capacity and the other applicants are averaging at 81%. The next lowest student is at 64%. I am so pleased, my son. Once again you've exceeded all of my expectations. She watched as the data poured in and saw the test batteries fly by rapidly, hour after hour. She was sipping her tea when suddenly Naruto's thought capacity usage shot up massively. What? Astrophysics? Naruto excels at that. Why would he? She didn't notice her old astrophysics instructor Dr. Danak smirk from the corner of the darkened proctor room. Exam hall. Naruto was in the middle of test battery 8 when an astrophysics problem dealing with time-space interface started to mathematically collapse. Naruto's blue eyes widened as he saw the lovely wave theorem he was about to complete suddenly imploded. Naruto was still battling 3 other screens as the 4th continued to spiral downwards. He rapidly came to a realization and adjusted the wave accordingly to slow down the collapse. Introducing known theorems, Naruto soon found the simulated warp field he was stabilizing had collapsed into a wormhole. Naruto then came to a conclusion. I have to enter the Cochrane Principle Theorem 3 and cause the wormhole to disperse it now, he thought aloud. Proctor Room. What do you mean the Cochrane Principle Theorem isn't in the computer, Dr. Danak? Roared Taara at her old instructor. That's a guaranteed fail for that problem. Danak said. Logically, any student who studied elementary warp theory has to know the works of Dr. Zephram Cochrane, Taara. Any applicant should have it memorized. Taara was seriously considering throttling her old instructor. They never got along regardless, but then suddenly Naruto's thought capacity shot above the limits. 110%, 133%, 147%. Taara was shocked when she realized what Naruto was doing. He's entering Zephram Cochrane's principal theorem manually. What? Dr. Danak practically screeched. Exam hall. Naruto's right hand was a blur on the view screen as he entered the missing theorem from memory. The blonde's left hand was dancing across the other three screens' questions at a normal rate while his right moved at proverbial warp speed. Mere minutes later, Naruto said aloud. Theorem entered. Punch it. The mathematical wormhole disintegrated back into a beautiful, perfect warp field. Seconds later, the screens all went blank and the computer spoke again. Test battery 8 completed. 8 standard hours have elapsed. Stand by for results. Naruto was breathing heavily as he stared at the screens. There are 8 to 10 test batteries depending on the course. I don't know if I could do that one again. Physics. 100% mathematics. 100% logic. 100% astrophysics. 100% all test batteries completed. Naruto made a fist with his right hand and it literally crackled with chakra as he held back a roar of victory. Applicant 2,267,155. Naruto Mafao. Stand by for cumulative entrance exam results. Droned the computer. Total score. 3,194 3,200 questions. Cumulative score. 99.8125%. Proctor Room. Yes. Roared Taara. She didn't hold back at all. That is my son. She turned to Danak and said, take that old man. You just couldn't let it go that I disproved your theory when I was still a student and tried to take it out on my boy. Once I've calmed down, I'm turning you over to the Academy Ethics Committee. She looked over Naruto's brainwave patterns and saw everything was completely back to normal and marked the hyper-thought patterns to look into later. Frankly, Taara couldn't have been happier at that moment. She was absolutely beaming. Students' Lounge. Naruto followed the instructions on the screen to go to the Students' Lounge and await further instructions. As he walked along, he saw many applicants were still working on their tests, but all of them had one thing in common. Each applicant looked pale, exhausted and generally brain dead. Naruto was sure he looked that way too. He got in line at the lounge where food and drinks were being issued to the tired competitors. He took a drink of what he thought was water and cringed. The woman behind the counter said, it's electrolytes. It will take care of your headache. You can get a regular drink once you've finished it. Applicant number 155. Talk about impersonal. Naruto mentally grumped. The least they could have done was added our names. Teacher's Lounge. Taara was eagerly going through the data on Naruto's brainwaves and having tea. He boosted both his thought speed and his physical speed using chakra when he was in a state of hyper-thought. This is absolutely fascinating. He partitioned off a specific set of neural tracts in his brain directly to his fingers to entirely isolate the thought processes required for Cochrane's principle, while the rest of his brain dealt with the other 3 sets of problems normally. Someone very advanced in the arts of telepathy might be able to do this, but Naruto did it instinctively to adapt to his extreme circumstances. Simply marvelous. Her thoughts were interrupted by an elderly male voice that said, "Is this seat taken, Dr. Taara?" Taara looked up and said, Director Sekla. I did not see you there. Forgive me, sir. She went to stand up and bow to the director of the academy, but he motioned her to remain seated. Sekla sat down with a tray of food and said, it is of no matter, Taara. I could tell you were quite immersed in your research and did not wish to interrupt. I heard that your son left quite an impression of Dr. Danak. He did the nigh impossible from what I've heard. The onyx-haired beauty said, I will submit a full report for you, sir. I apologize if I seem remiss. I needed to calm myself a bit before proceeding. Director Sekla said, and what better way to calm oneself than to immerse the mind in new data? The director had a gleam in his eye. Did you actually say, take that old man, to Danak? Tara nearly fell out of her chair in embarrassment. Blushing bright green, she said delicately, in my defense, Dr. Danak and I have been at odds ever since I was an undergrad and I disproved his theory on interphase space. The director said, it would be more appropriate to say you utterly destroyed Danak's theory that he was so proud of. I have to say it was the most devastating application of both quantum mechanics and astrophysics I've ever seen presented by an undergraduate student to date, and I've been teaching for almost a century now. Danak's ego was too big to let it go though, said Tara with a slight growl in her voice. He deliberately took his grievances with me out on my 13-year-old son. And your boy passed the test with honors regardless of the odds, Dr. Tara. You should be proud, said Director Sekla. 37 members of the proctoring staff agree with you on Dr. Danak's behavior and have already reported it to both myself and the Academy Ethics Committee. The other 13 members of the proctoring staff haven't had time to compile their reports yet. Tara raised a delicate eyebrow. That many agreed with me? You are completely in the right, Tara, said Sekla. Logically, if Danak wanted to randomly test a cross-section of students with such a difficult task, he would have not only turned it over to the committee for approval, he would have had several students mock-tested. Giving only your son a nearly impossible task is not what the spirit of the Vulcan Science Academy is about. Had your son failed, he would have been allowed a retest once things were sorted out. I'm afraid Danak has gone too far this time. Students' lounge. Naruto finished his food and sat waiting at a table. He got out his tablet and started recording his views on the entrance exam for his mother's sake. She had asked him for his opinion so she could compare it to her brainwave studies. As he typed away, a rather tall young Vulcan woman sat down across the table from him. She set her tray of food down and said, "No offense, but aren't you a bit young to be here, number 155? I'm 13 years old, so my age meets the requirements, number 167. Countered Naruto. He set his tablet down and said, my name is Naruto of the Mafao clan. What is yours? I'm Senva of the Tolik clan. Said the Vulcan girl. I'm 16. Her mid-length black hair was cut in a rather conservative bob. Naruto noticed she was rather pretty. Forgive my curiosity, but where do you come from? If you hail from the Mafao clan, then. Naruto raised an eyebrow. I'm a half-Vulcan hybrid. I was born here in Shikar and was raised as a Vulcan. My appearance always draws attention, so do not worry, it is natural to be curious. She looked slightly surprised at his straightforward answer. It must be awkward with others. I'm used to it, said the blonde. How do you think you did on the test? There are 500 applicants and only 100 will be allowed? Senva said, I scored in the mid-90th percentile, so I've passed the minimum requirements to gain entry. Naruto nodded. I passed too. I understand 88% is the lowest that can get in, and often there are not enough applicants that score high enough to make a full class of 100. The Vulcan Science Academy has strict standards to maintain the level of excellence it is renowned for, said Senva. Hopefully we will both become classmates, said Naruto. Senva's dark hazel eyes lit up slightly. Yes, let us hope for that. Exam hall. The head proctor read off the scores to the assembled applicants. Starting in first place in class scores at 100% we have. Naruto mentally groaned. Figures, like mother said, there's always some overachieving genius that gets a perfect score. Number 155, Naruto Mafo. Third in class, scores at 99.8125%, passed with honors. Passed with honors, thought Naruto. I didn't know you could get honors with an entrance exam. The two above me didn't get them, how odd. Senva looked over at Naruto impressed. I had no idea. He didn't indicate how well he did. Most would show arrogance, but he hasn't displayed any of that. Number 167. Senva Tolik. 24th in class, scores at 95.0625%, passed. Naruto nodded and silently congratulated Senva through eye contact. She nodded back with a pleased look in her eyes. 87 of the 500 applicants passed and are officially accepted into the Vulcan Science Academy. We bid you welcome, said the head proctor. You will receive further instructions before you leave regarding your enrollment. The remaining applicants are invited to try again next year. Live long and prosper. Naruto congratulated Senva verbally and then waited quietly as the students mingled with each other and their parents and families that were present. Taara soon emerged from the crowd and easily picked out her son from the throng because of his blonde locks. "Ah, there is my fine son," said Taara as she beamed at her blonde-haired boy. "I cannot tell you how proud I am of you at this moment." Naruto stepped outside on a viewing deck with his mother and felt the hot desert air blowing his hair back. He found his center and thought about the forge. "Ah, I need to rest my fevered brain. It has been a long day." Taara ruffled his hair. "Your hair is starting to get long again, Naruto. I've often wondered if you shouldn't grow it out like your father," she said conversationally. "What did you think of your entrance exams?" "They were taxing," said the blonde. Entering Cochrane's principal manually was quite unexpected. "I suspect that many students would have had difficulty with that question." "Perhaps it's just me. I'm surprised that you didn't mention it, mother." The onyx-eyed beauty had humor in her eyes. "That's because it wasn't supposed to be on the test, my son. I doubt most of the staff could have entered it within the time constraints, let alone the students. That is why you alone passed with honors." Naruto's blonde eyebrows shot up. "Why did I receive such a difficult task then?" Taara gave one of her minimalist smiles and said, Let me tell you a story, Naruto. Once there was a hot-headed undergraduate and an arrogant professor. The professor had a theory he was promoting about the existence of interphase space that was only discovered in the last 50 years or so. The blonde leaned back, seeing the twinkle in his mother's onyx eyes. "So what happened to the professor?" he asked eagerly. The professor was so conceited and confident in his theory that he challenged any of his students to disprove it, said Tara. Unfortunately, one of his undergraduate students was so incensed by his sheer arrogance that she took it upon herself to totally dismember his theory on every level she could think of. As it turned out, the professor's theory held up fairly well from the strict views of astrophysics, so the undergraduate changed her angle to quantum mechanics and found the professor's theory didn't hold up so well. Naruto watched as his mother recalled those days and saw her passion for science hidden behind all that logic. He hid a smile as the black-haired beauty continued and said, "The undergraduate was sure she could disprove the theory but spent nearly 5 weeks polishing every last point of her counter-arguments to his so-called perfect theory. She challenged him to a debate and the professor said that he would only accept her challenge in front of the other staff and alumni of the Vulcan Science Academy Advisory Board. Such a challenge had never been issued to anyone without a full doctoral degree, and the undergraduate was understandably shocked by such a stipulation." "Did she accept his stipulation?" asked Naruto. Tara nodded. "At first it brought her great concern, but then she reasoned that if her mathematics disproved his theory to computer simulations, that it was irrefutably logical that the same results would occur in front of any group of scientists regardless of their backgrounds. Having thought this through, she accepted his challenge in front of the entire class of 90 students, and the professor had no choice but to accept her challenge or lose a tremendous amount of face at the academy." Naruto rubbed his chin in thought. So the professor was ensnared in a trap of his own design. "Exactly," said Tara. "So what did you do to him, mother?" asked Naruto with a raised brow. "I destroyed Dr. Danak's theory of interphase space from its foundations to its very last conclusions in a 3-hour debate moderated by Director Sekla himself. Danak's hubris brought about his downfall, and all of his taunting and harassment of his undergraduate students was brought to light. It turned out he'd done this sort of thing to many of his students over the years, and the Academy Ethics Committee penalized him heavily for his behavior." She let out a contented sigh. "Looking back, I could have been much more mature about it, but his attitude towards those he is supposed to be educating disgusts me to this day. He and I have been at odds ever since then." The blonde grinned. "I do believe you could call it a victory then." She ruffled Naruto's blonde hair again in her usual affectionate way. "Best of all, my son has defeated Dr. Danak as well this very day." Naruto looked surprised and said, "I did." Taara explained, "Dr. Danak took Cochrane's principle out of the computer specifically so you would fail. Just to spite me after all these years. Then you shocked everyone by manually entering the formula manually within the allotted time. Everybody would have considered it an impossible task, but you did it. This time it wasn't just me that caught him in the act. The majority of the proctoring staff that he was supposed to be leading has already submitted formal reports against him to both the Academy Ethics Committee and Director Sekla himself.
Danak has gone too far this time, but the fact you beat him at his own game makes me immensely proud of you, my son. You did very well and I could not be more pleased.
Naruto wanted to laugh. I had no idea that mother had such a vicious streak in her. I wonder if my pranking isn't from her in part. Tara wondered about the obvious amusement in her son's blue eyes but was interrupted from asking about it because all the 87 new students were paged back inside. To Lyra's house, the blue-wearing girl peered out her window and thought about her blonde friend. I wonder what you are doing now, Naruto. Did you pass?
Did you fail? She sighed. Naruto must have passed. He'll be crushed if he didn't. But I'll miss him at school every day. We've known each for 8 years now. She fiddled with her long brown hair. Well, if Naruto passes I will celebrate with him. If he doesn't I will be there for him to console him. The last few days he has done his best to hide it, but I could see how his muscles were wound up like a spring. He was as tense as could be. I'm worried. To Lyra's mother, Anuik came in and saw her daughter staring off into space. She is concerned. To Lyra, are you thinking about Naruto again?
The daughter whipped around surprised. Oh, mother, you startled me. I was just wondering how Naruto's entrance exams at the Vulcan Science Academy are going. I'd call him, but the test is supposed to be an all-day event. He probably has his communicator off. I'm hoping to hear from him later in the evening.
I'm sure you'll hear from him by tomorrow, said Lyra's mother. If he doesn't pass he probably won't want to discuss it, so be patient with him, Lyra.
Lyra nodded. You are correct, of course. I'll leave my communicator on just in case. Her communicator beeped about that time and the blue-wearing girl nearly jumped and snatched her device off the table. She nearly groaned, "It's Kesh."
Listening to her daughter explain to Kesh that Lyra hadn't heard from Naruto either, Anuik quietly excused herself to give her daughter some privacy. Taara and Sovar's house. Sovar was pacing back and forth wondering how Naruto was doing while his daughter Taylok played Kalto serenely in the living room floor. The 4-year-old said, "Daddy, why are you worried? Naruto is so smart he should pass easily, assuming he doesn't decide to prank the proctors. Do think he will? Mama will not be happy if he does."
Naruto's father nearly face-faulted at the thought of his son pulling off something crazy and getting banned from the Vulcan Science Academy. Please don't do something insane, Naruto, he silently prayed. Taylok finished creating a lopsided, egg-shaped sphere playing Kalto and chirped, "Perfect. Come look, Daddy. I'll dance to celebrate."
Sovar watched fondly as Taylok did her own interpretive dance of AV Shan routine. He mused to himself, I wonder if Taylok could become a dancer someday. I know Mother's line had several dancers in it, although none of them are as pretty as my little girl. Father and daughter heard the noise of the family hovercraft as it pulled up out front. Both of them immediately shot over to the front window with identical expressions as they smushed their faces against the transparent aluminum windows to get a better look. Taara hopped of the hovercraft and immediately saw her husband and daughter putting hand and face prints on the front window. She would have been concerned with cleaning up the windows but was in too good of a mood to care at this point. Naruto got out and she immediately motioned him towards the trunk to get his school uniforms, Vulcan Science Academy tablet and the rest of the heap of things he'd received for his enrollment. The blonde's head was spinning a bit with all of his new belongings. Taara then led her heavily laden son into the house.
Sovar met them at the door with Taylok and the little girl said, "Naruto, what's all that stuff? Did you pass?" Naruto peered down over all of his new belongings and took them over to the couch where he set the pile down. He smiled and said, "I passed and I placed third out of the 87 in my class." Taylok's onyx eyes flashed and she said in her cute little voice, "Why weren't you first?" It took everything Naruto had not to face fault. Sovar hugged Naruto and said, "That's my boy, I knew you would do well, we should celebrate." Tara picked up Taylok and said, "Your brother did amazingly well, Taylok. All things considered he did more than first and second place did. Besides, he can always move up in the rankings." "How should we celebrate then?" Sovar asked his family. "I was so concerned with the entry exams themselves that I didn't think about afterwards." "We could dance," said Taylok excitedly. "Maybe it would be better to go to a restaurant Naruto likes," said Tara to her daughter.
Sovar nodded. Perhaps Naruto would like to invite his friends along. "What do you think, Naruto? Do you want to call Lyra and Kesh? I'm sure they would like to congratulate you. It isn't every day that you get into the Vulcan Science Academy.
Taylok looked over and said, Naruto? The blonde was sleeping peacefully on the couch. The next day Naruto's family and friends celebrated the blonde's entry into a new phase of his life. For Talyra and Kesh it was a bittersweet time. They were immensely pleased for Naruto's sake, but it was also a sign that their childhood years were quickly coming to an end.
Naruto was surrounded by extended family as well, and his grandmother Sarissa gave him some of the things from Taara's days at the academy years before. Naruto was very pleased with the many gifts he received. Most of them were study aids, books and other practical things for the academy, but Naruto accepted them all with gratitude. My son is growing up so fast, thought Sovar aloud. Varric said to her son, it seems like only yesterday that he passed his Cause 1. I can't believe he's moving away to the dorms. My little grandson is moving away and becoming an adult so fast. He's only moving 5 kilometers away, said Taara. Even if it's required, living in the dorms will teach him about living independently and being more responsible with his life.
It is fortunate my old speeder bike 4 was still in storage so Naruto can easily get to and from home easily, said Sovar conversationally. I really don't like the idea of Naruto riding that vehicle, said Tara. I never felt safe with you riding it, Sovar.
Sovar said, you worry far too much, my wife. It got me around safely for years. And how many times did you nearly die on that moving death trap? Asked Taara dryly. Outside, Naruto was looking over his father's old bike. It was a rust-colored vehicle that had an excessive amount of wear from being ridden hard in the desert for many years. I'll have to get a license and bring this bike up to safety standards. It appears quite worn in areas. It seems that over a decade of sandblasting in the desert wore a lot of components out.
Talyra was sitting on the bike and said, it seems you have yet another hobby to learn about Naruto. Does this bike actually run?
According to father, it did 10 years ago when it was put in storage, said Naruto dubiously. Whether that has any bearing on the present is debatable. What is this? Asked Kesh eagerly. Naruto looked at his manual and said, that appears to be a leaking coolant head. Kesh scratched his chin. What about that part? The blonde looked at the contraption and then raised an eyebrow before he looked back and forth at the schematics and the manual a few times. That appears to be some sort of non-standard modification to the throttle control. I doubt it's legal. Only you, father. Talyra had amusement in her brown eyes. It seems that you have a talent for spotting broken things, Kesh. How ironically appropriate. Kesh nearly face-faulted before he said, let's fire it up, Naruto. I want to hear it run. The blue-wearing girl said dubiously, this bike looks more likely to burst into flames than start up, Kesh. But Talyra, started the long-haired boy. I believe Talyra has made a fair assessment, said Naruto. I need to thoroughly go through the diagnostics before attempting to start it. Kesh was obviously excited. Well, get to it, man. I want to ride it. Considering the way you ride Gerald's, that might be a disaster, Kesh, said Talyra. Let's get it into shape so Naruto can test it out, with a proper license, of course. Naruto nodded. That seems to be the most logical course of action. Are you both sure you want to help? I'm certain this will be a filthy job with lots of hard physical labor. Of course, said Talyra. It will be enjoyable working together. Count me in, said Kesh. Then this will be my weekend project while I go to the academy during the week, said Naruto.
Naruto's parents came out and saw the 3 kids examining the bike. Catching the tail end of the children's conversation, Tara said, just remember your schoolwork always takes precedence over that old bike, Naruto. Sovar asked, so have you started it up yet? We've determined that it might burst into flames rather than start, said Naruto. It would be logical to err on the side of caution. Sovar deflated and said, you are truly your mother's son. Tara simply gave one of her tiny smiles. It was Sunday. Naruto put the last of his belongings into their proper places and sat down on his bed to relax. It had been a rather tumultuous 2 days of moving his belongings from home to his new suite, which was a very tranquil pale blue color. The dormitories themselves were single-story and each dormitory was arranged in the most logical way possible. Every room was unnamed, unmarked and identical in shape and size. Students were expected to notice the subtle differences in orientation, color and position to determine which room was theirs. Each dormitory had a single main hall that led to the other buildings and of course was designed with impeccable logic in mind. The blonde found himself admiring the symmetry and rationality of the academy's layout and understood why his mother liked it so much here. Like the forge was a second home to Sovar, the academy was to Terra. He noted that every room was illuminated by natural light and the entire facility was very energy efficient. Looking out of his windows onto the campus proper, Naruto saw the intricate silver and white domes with spires arranged in orderly places among them. The academy was surrounded by tranquil, well-maintained parkland and the buildings and the parks flowed harmoniously into one another. Even the lawns were perfectly maintained and each one was in a perfect geometric shape. The same could be said of the many trees and shrubs. All things were in their logical place. Naruto sighed peacefully as he took in his new surroundings. Until a horrendous cacophony from the next suite over nearly bowled Naruto off of his bed. He heard something like an animal howling and crashing and the blonde immediately went out to investigate. He found many other students peering out of their doors or standing outside the suite beside Naruto's. They all seemed to be puzzled and mulling around outside quietly observing. Naruto said authoritatively, "Has no one investigated this infernal noise?" Seeing everyone take a step back, the blonde said, "Someone could be injured. We must investigate this situation at once." He went over and rapped on the door loudly before he said, "Can anyone hear me in there?" The door came open and a tall, black-haired human male said, "You here to join the party? You look kinda young to be here." A red-headed human girl poked her head out through the doorway. She was laughing and smelled of alcohol. "Look at you, blondie, aren't you cute? Come on in." "I don't think he's here to party, Allison," said the male as Naruto's eyes seemed to be burning a hole in his chest. The girl flipped her shoulder-length hair back and laughed. "Of course, he is. I'm Allison Fairbanks and this is my buddy Jeff Baker. Where did you get those cute whisker marks?" Naruto felt his ears starting to hurt from what he realized was some sort of music and the smell of alcohol was bothering his sensitive nose. The smell of humans wasn't too great either. Vulcans don't sweat, humans do. One. Naruto turned his burning blue eyes to Geoff's frightened brown ones and said, "Unless you want the academy administration to get involved, I would turn that sound down a few decibels." The blonde then marched back to his room and closed the door. Jeff cringed and Allison laughed. "I like him," said the redhead. Naruto went back to his suite and found that the noise level was turned down considerably, though he could still hear it. Of all the rooms in this academy, I have to be next door to rowdy humans. I can't help but feel this is no coincidence, he thought mutinously. The blonde hybrid sighed and looked back at his school uniforms and civilian clothing he had arranged in his closet. Some people preferred the uniforms, but the only time they were actually required were for formal ceremonies, and there were a lot of formal ceremonies. His standard uniform was a conservative gray and black. Naruto's civilian clothing was his traditional browns, tans and blacks, though he did have one set of formal robes that were a deep crimson. They represented the Mafao clan. He was rather proud of those. Aside of that, Naruto had a platinum medallion presented to him that showed he was a first-year student, and he was to wear it at all times at the academy. It was emblemized with the infinite diversity and infinite combinations symbol too, and in the ring around it was the Gallic Vulcan script for learn. As the years in the academy passed, more symbols would be added in the ring around the IDIC symbol that showed each student's respective position and achievements within the organization of the academy. Listening to the quiet thumping of the music through the wall, Naruto wondered what tomorrow would bring with the start of classes. Monday, main auditorium. Naruto's first 4 periods of the morning classes had been preempted by a formal meeting. It had been stressful to the blonde as most of it was just things regarding decorum and rules regarding behavior for newcomers. The entire meeting seemed endless to Naruto, and speech after speech explaining the hows and whys of the academy lifestyle was imparted to the first years. Gods, I wish I could relax with some advanced calculus, thought the blonde. He had looked around for his acquaintance Senva but did not see her. He did see the human Jeff looking nervous and Allison looking amused at the morning proceedings. After a healthy lunch in the dorm cafeteria, Naruto actually went to his first class of the day. His 5th period was an hour dedicated to physical education. There were many activities to choose from, but Naruto chose to join in a martial arts group and went over to a set of mats dedicated to practitioners of Vishan. He saw Senva there getting handily defeated by an older student. I didn't know she practiced Vishan, thought Naruto.
She's an advanced learner but not quite an adept yet.
The instructor asked, "First year, are you here to participate or observe?" Naruto found his center and said, "I am here to participate in the Vishan matches, master. My name is Naruto." The instructor looked at the young hybrid oddly and said, "I am Instructor Aloran. As you are new, we will need to gauge your skill level." Naruto nodded and said, "I am prepared, Master Aloran." Aloran nodded. "You use formal speech for your martial arts. I take it you have some formal training?" "You are correct, master. I've trained for 8 years," said the spiky-haired blonde. "I am a 10th level Vishan adept." Several eyes widened and an older student said, "That is highly improbable. Are you sure you are not a 10th level learner?" "I stand by my words," said Naruto. "How old are you?" asked Aloran. The blue-eyed boy said, "I am 13. I will prove my skill to you with an appropriate sparring partner." Master Aloran raised an eyebrow and said, "Galsh, come here. Will you test this young man?" Galsh was 2 heads taller than Naruto and extremely broad and muscular. He absolutely towered over the blonde hybrid. Galsh asked, "Instructor Aloran, you wish for me to spar with this boy?" Aloran nodded and Naruto walked into the ring and bowed formally, "May we have a good match?" The big student looked slightly confused but then bowed and said, "Yes, let us have a good match." "Galsh, Naruto. Begin," said Instructor Aloran. Naruto hit Galsh before the big man could react. Naruto kicked Galsh's feet to the right as he gripped the larger man's left hand and flipped him completely to the left, causing Galsh to flip over twice. Galsh tried to recover with a foot sweep at Naruto, but the blonde anticipated the move and flipped back and away from Galsh and his superior reach. Galsh got back up and shook his head. "I need to take this boy seriously," he thought. Forming 2 knife hands, Galsh attacked with a quick and ruthless set of combos that Naruto batted aside or deflected harmlessly. Galsh went for a neck chop, but Naruto caught his larger opponent's hand, flipped Galsh completely over his shoulder, causing the larger martial artist to land flat on his back, which knocked the wind out of him. Naruto jumped back in a fluid motion and slid into a low stance that extended his leg reach. Galsh was shaking the cobwebs out of his head from the flip. Naruto's eyes burned with determination, and he charged with an open palm and hit 3 pressure points before he finished Galsh off with a foot sweep. Galsh was lying flat on his back again in a state of disbelief as Instructor Aloran called the match in Naruto's favor. The blonde bowed and said, "Thank you for the match. Please allow me to unlock those nerve clusters." Galsh nodded as Naruto tapped his pressure points and caused the tension to be released. Then Naruto helped Galsh up and said, "Good spar. You are an 8th level adept, correct?" Galsh's eyes widened. "How could you tell? You lack the footwork to go with the speed of your hands," said Naruto honestly. "It is a stage we all must pass." "You are quite skilled, Galsh," praised Naruto. The observers of the match were all completely dumbfounded. Instructor Aloran said, "Unlocking nerve clusters like that is a 2nd level master skill." Naruto said, "I have a long way to go before I am a 2nd level master in Vishan, Master Aloran. I am but an adept that has much to learn." The blonde was going to go greet Senva but was swept away by several high-ranking Vishan students that wanted Naruto's advice. He waved at her, and she waved back. There was amusement in her eyes. After weathering dozens of questions, Naruto managed to make it over to Senva, who was watching the other students spar. She said, "It is good to see you are well. I had no idea you had such skill in the martial arts." Naruto shrugged, "It is good to see you too. I'm in the Western dormitory. Where are you?" "I'm in the opposite side of the academy in the Eastern dorm," replied Senva. "Hey Naruto. Is this your girlfriend?" asked Allison as she materialized out of the crowd. "You kicked some serious ass out there." "How did she find me?" The blonde face palmed and said, "Aw Senva, this is Miss Fairbanks who lives in the same dorm I do." "Yo. Call me Allison," said the redhead. "We're next door neighbors after all." "I thought that was Mr. Geoff's room," said Naruto dryly. Allison shook her head. "Nope. Jeff lives on my other side. You should have partied with us. You're cool enough in my book. Where did you learn to fight like that?" "My parents are both Vishan masters," explained the blonde hybrid. "Best not to mention Kareel Ifla. Most people consider it brutal. Besides, I'm better at it than Vishan." Allison turned to Senva and said, "So Miss Senva, Are you Naruto's girlfriend? Senva blushed a tiny bit. He and I just met at the entrance exams. I am not his girlfriend. Then you don't mind if I take him as my study buddy? Asked Allison. Study buddy, asked both Naruto and Senva with identical flat tones. Allison said conspiratorially, you passed with honors. I looked that up and that's something that only happens every 50 or 60 years. Given you placed third, I can safely assume that you are some kind of genius at something. Rumor has it you blew the staff away on astrophysics. Naruto. She waggled her eyebrows. Am I right? Naruto's blue eyes widened a tiny bit, but inside he was panicking. By the gods, I have a human stalker. Ahem. It is not logical to speculate just on rumors. I would be curious as to where you obtained this information. A girl is entitled to her secrets, said the redhead with a smile like the cat that ate the canary. We have astrophysics and quantum theory together this afternoon, so I'll see you then. Allison then spun on her heel and walked off energetically. Naruto thought aloud, how could she know my class schedule? This is most disturbing. Indeed, it is. Agreed Senva as her comment rattled him out of his thoughts. I too have astrophysics this afternoon. What period do you have yours? I have astrophysics with Professor Iria during my 7th period, answered Naruto. Excellent, said Senva. I shall see you there. I need to get to my 6th period. You probably should get to yours as well. Senva then departed. Naruto was astounded at the intensity of his 6th period. Somehow, I expected writing and literature to be relaxing. Professor Kawarda runs her class in an almost militaristic fashion. I already have a report due Friday on passages from the Logic of the Forge. He sighed. What a heavy piece of reading to squeeze into a single week. The blonde walked into the astrophysics lecture hall and immediately felt himself relax at the many mathematical formulas written on the walls as well as laws and advanced theories. Much better, he whispered to himself. Within minutes everyone had arrived and had picked a random learning station. He was soon greeted by Senva, who took a station to his right, and Allison, who took a station on his left by rudely asking someone else to move. The redhead waved and grinned. Naruto thought, curse my blonde hair. I'm so easy to spot. While Naruto was lamenting his spiky blonde locks, Professor Iria walked in and stood before the class. She was a tall and imposing Vulcan woman. I bid you greetings. I am Professor Iria and I am the new head of the astrophysics department with Dr. Danak's retirement. She looked directly at Naruto for a split second, but her expression was unreadable. I have high expectations for this class since we have both the 2nd and 3rd ranked members of the first-year class here. Miss Allison Fairbanks and Mr. Naruto Mafao will no doubt be leading our class in scoring, so if you need extra tutoring, you might consider asking them. Please raise your hands for the others, you too. As he raised his hand, Naruto's blue eyes nearly popped out of his head as Allison's green ones sparkled with mirth. Senva likewise was doing her best not to gawk like all the other students were. You may lower your hands, said Professor Iria. She pointed towards the main holographic display and said, direct your attention to the main display class. Today we will discuss the very basics of warp theory, which you all should know by now, so you may all become acclimated to the way this class is organized. Naruto watched distressed as various students were studying him carefully. He felt nervous at being singled out and put on the spot, but Allison was happily soaking up the attention she was getting. This is so awesome, said Allison as she walked towards the quantum physics class together with Naruto. Not only does Professor Iria like us, but she also acknowledged us in front of the other students. I felt it was rather rude, replied the blonde. I wonder what her agenda is. The redhead chuckled. We're 2 of the 3 top-scoring students in our year. What do you mean agenda? Naruto sighed. Vulcans value their privacy. For her to call us out in front of the other students, she must have a logical reason. He shook his head. Changing topics, considering you have a higher score than I do on the entrance exams, why do you need me to study with you? I'm quite sure you could pass without me. Allison smiled weakly. I'm all alone here and it's hard to find people that I can be friends with. I've always been too smart for other people, so most people avoid me. Naruto saw her green eyes had a sadness in them and said quietly, I'll be your study partner then. I know it's hard to be alone from experience. The redhead glomped him in a massive hug and said, great, we'll knock them all dead. For his part, Naruto was blushing green and was too mortified to speak at such a blatantly emotional display. Naruto's first day of class was over and he made it back to his suite and sat down. What an exhausting day, he thought aloud. Getting out his tablet, Naruto went through the files and brought up the first chapter of Surik's Logic of the Forge. He went through the introduction and thought to himself, this is no way to enjoy Surik's teachings. This is like having the data shoved into your brain like. There was a rattle noise and then a thumping at his door. What is it now? Growled the blonde. He got up and said, unlock. The door immediately slid open, and Jeff Baker fell in the doorway with an oof. Jeff looked up and saw Naruto's feet, black robes, medallion and finally the blonde's rather stern face and blazing blue eyes. May I help you, Mr. Jeff? Naruto asked the black-haired young man. Seeing Naruto's rather intense look, Jeff said, I'm sorry, Naruto. I thought this was my room. He gave the blonde a weak smile. Sorry about that. Naruto held out his hand and pulled Jeff to his feet. As the blonde looked at the tall and lanky boy, he said, there is no need to be so timid, Jeff. It isn't like I'm going to hurt you. Jeff scratched his neck nervously and said, I felt kind of bad about disturbing you with the loud music yesterday. Thanks for not reporting us. Allison is kind of out of control. The blonde motioned towards a seat and said, tea? The human boy looked surprised and said, sure, thank you. Naruto served some tea from his food replicator and said, tea out of a food replicator is a poor substitute for home-brewed tea, but it's all I have to serve, I'm afraid. Jeff took a sip and said, it's good. The two young men sat in silence as they sipped their tea and the dark-haired boy asked, so how are your classes? Allison said she has 3 class periods with you. She seemed really tickled. The blonde sat his tea aside and said, yes, we have physical education, astrophysics and quantum physics together. She seemed pleased. She seems to really like you, said Jeff. I wouldn't stand a chance with her. The young man shrugged. I think you're her type. Naruto raised a questioning eyebrow. Her type? I'm not familiar with your meaning. I assume that's a Terran phrase? Jeff chuckled. I mean you're the type of guy she finds attractive, like a boyfriend. You mean you aren't her boyfriend, Jeff? Asked Naruto, puzzled. You were in her room, and she was. Allison says I'm too old and too wimpy, said Jeff. Besides, she's a genius and I barely made it in. I'm at the bottom of our class of 87. The blonde asked, how old are you? I'm 13 and you don't look old to me. I'm almost 18. Allison is 14. Explained Jeff. On top of that, I'm already balding. It's kind of embarrassing. It's simple genetics, said Naruto. I fail to see why it would be a source of discomfort for you. Isn't baldness a common thing among human males? Jeff smiled. Some men lose their hair later in life, but I'm very young, so it makes me look older. Naruto picked up his cup and took a sip of tea. You are very self-conscious about yourself. You should focus on the positives rather than the negatives. You must be very intelligent, or you wouldn't have made it into the Vulcan Science Academy to begin with. Adhere to your strengths to overcome your weaknesses. That's what my parents taught me. You seem awfully wise for someone that's 13, Naruto, said Jeff. Thanks for the tea. I'm 2 rooms south, right? You are welcome, and you are 2 rooms north, said Naruto as he showed Jeff to the door and pointed north. Have a good night, said Naruto as the black-haired young man went to his room. Now to get back to my reading. Stardate 2267.310, Planet Vulcan, Shikar District, Vulcan Science Academy. Personal log. My first week at the Vulcan Science Academy has been quite tumultuous. My original plans to go home this weekend and work on father's old bike with Talira and Kesh have been completely dismembered faster than you could say, homework. Talira in particular seemed distressed over the situation. When I mentioned I was helping my new study partners and that 2 of them were female, she told me a piece of Vulcan wisdom that was imparted to her by her mother. All women are insane and all men are stupid. I've been pondering this matter for several hours and I have yet to figure out the logic behind it. Perhaps I should ask my mother for advice on this matter. On an unconnected note, I have finally perfected the spiraling sphere, or Rasengan. That is pure shape manipulation of my chakra. I need to test its capabilities as it is combat-oriented. I have come to the conclusion that these ancestral memories are gradually being unlocked as I grow stronger physically and spiritually. It is a difficult concept to conceive at this point, but my most recent memory dreams have been of a technique called the shadow clone. I believe it could unlock possibilities that quite literally defy the laws of conventional physics. Of course, chakra in general is a mystery that Mother and I have yet to unravel, other than it is an evolutionary step towards controlling the body's bioelectric energy. I wish I had more time to dedicate to studying chakra, but my various professors' current goal in life seems to be burying me alive in homework. Just as bad. Due to Professor Iria's announcement, I have numerous astrophysics students that have asked me for guidance. The blonde put down his tablet. Mother is correct. Keeping a personal log does help organize one's thoughts at the beginning of the day. I will have to thank her for the advice. Now to have a quiet break. He heard a pounding on his door. Oh, what the hell is it now? He growled mentally. Naruto opened his door to the overzealous Allison, who said with characteristic cheerfulness, "Good morning, Blondie. Ready for another exciting day?" "My plans for a peaceful morning of reflection have been shot down in flames," lamented the blonde hybrid. Allison laughed. "Who needs a boring morning of reflection when you can have a whole day of excitement with me? Besides, poor Jeff needs our help." Urged to prank, rising. "There will be a reckoning, Red. Just you wait," thought Naruto darkly. "Allison's sweet. After lunch, it's bloody impossible," cried Jeff. Naruto said, "No, it's genetics. You have the same professor I do, Jeff. This is basic stuff." "I think Professor Tapar hates me," lamented the dark-haired boy. "It's just chromosomal drift between species," said Senva. "When you crossbreed animals, then the resulting hybrid will be unique." Allison grinned. "They're talking about you again, Naruto." The blonde just shrugged. Jeff snapped his fingers. "No wonder. I guess that's why you understand this stuff so well, huh, Naruto? Considering half of me is Vulcan and the other half is unknown, then yes, I've studied genetics with my mother extensively," said Naruto. "Unknown?" asked Senva. "Everyone assumed you were half human like Ambassador Sarek's famous son Spock." "What are you then?" asked Allison curiously as her green eyes stared intently at Naruto. "Is that why you have those cute whisker marks?" Jeff scolded. "Allison, don't be rude, but I want to know," replied the inquisitive redhead. "My species is unknown," said Naruto. "The whisker birthmarks do seem to come from that side though. It's mainly classified by Starfleet, so I don't talk about it." Senva looked very curious. "Then you really don't know? That must be very unsettling." "It is vexing sometimes, but my parents have always treated me as a normal Vulcan child," explained Naruto. "I've just always been a bit different in appearance." "Rats. I was hoping you'd have some cool abilities outside of normal Vulcans," said Allison in a disappointed tone. Naruto's eyes glittered. "You mean like walking up walls and across ceilings in defiance of gravity?" "Exactly," exclaimed Allison. "You have quite an imagination there, Naruto," said Jeff. "It sounded like something Allison would appreciate," said the blonde. Senva said, "Perhaps we should get back to our genetics homework. Professor Tapar expects it to be completed first thing Monday morning." Gymnasium. The next morning, Sunday morning, Naruto was up early and was at the gymnasium practicing his V-Shan routine with his new friend Gulch, as Master Aloran observed. "You need to relax your stances more, Gulch," advised the blonde. "Find your center and release your mind and body from their confines." Naruto gently stretched at an impossible angle into a handstand. Then he flipped back into a standing position. "Forgive me, Naruto, but that was not V-Shan," said Gulch in a puzzled tone. Naruto nodded. "Correct. I see no reason to limit oneself to a single style." Gulch asked, "What martial art was that then?" Instructor Aloran commented, "Unless I am mistaken, that was one of the exercises to build upper body strength in the style of Kirill Ifla. Kirill Ifla is said to be absolutely brutal," said Gulch in a concerned tone. "It is also incredibly effective regardless of its reputation for being barbaric," said the blonde. "My father is a 6th level master at Kirill Ifla, Master Aloran." Aloran's eyes nearly popped out of his head. "A 6th level master? What does he think of you mixing moves of different martial arts?" Naruto hid his amusement at Aloran's reaction. "Father always found my style to be unpredictable and innovative. He has always approved ever since he started training me out in Forge." "You've trained in the Forge?" asked Gulch. That sounds very harsh. Ever since I was 5 years old, said Naruto. I got beat up rather badly by other children, so father and mother trained me in their respective arts. Mother is a second-level master in Vishan, so she is no pushover. Aloran waved the two boys over to sit with him and have some tea. After the three sat down together, the master asked, "So what level would you say you are at in Koreal IFLA?" "I currently hold the rank of a second-level master in Koreal IFLA," said Naruto. "It actually comes more natural to me than Vishan." Galsh took a sip of tea. "I'm surprised you never mentioned this before," said the big young man. Naruto shrugged. Koreal IFLA has a reputation that precedes it. Many people have the misconception that practitioners of Koreal IFLA are uncivilized, so I rarely discuss it. "That is a logical bit of reasoning, Naruto," said Aloran in approval. "That being said, I have observed Koreal IFLA matches and they are quite brutal to watch. Neither Galsh nor I will mention this to others." Galsh nodded in agreement and Naruto said, "I thank you. What do you say we get back to our Vishan practice?" Naruto's suite. After practice, Naruto was talking to Talyra on his communicator. "I am glad to hear from you, Talyra. You seemed frustrated when we last spoke. Is everything all right?" "Something rather drastic has happened," said Talyra in a strained voice. "I would like to see you in person to relate the news as it is of a sensitive nature." Noting the stress in his friend's voice, the blonde pulled out his tablet and said, "I can come out via transport bus this evening at 6. I can take one back here at 9. Will that be enough time, Talyra?" "It should be enough," said the blue-wearing girl. "I'm sorry to interrupt your studies, but if you deem it necessary, then I will be there," Naruto said with a tone of finality. "I trust your logic on these matters. Where do you want to meet?" "My house would be best," said Talyra. "Very well, I will see you this evening," replied Naruto. Cafeteria. The group of 4 study partners was having breakfast together. "And so, I propose we use Naruto's room instead of mine today," said Allison. "With all my stuff it's a bit crowded." "That seems logical," said Senva. "The excessive clutter in your room is distracting. Not to mention it smells like humans." "Hey, I like my room," defended the redhead. "It's a work in progress." "It looks more like a starship's crash site," commented Jeff. "Shut up before I hurt you, Jeff," said Allison. "My room isn't that bad." Jeff said, "Off topic, but how come Vulcan last names are so hard to say?" "Mayat Phao isn't that hard to say. It's Gallic Vulcan for clan who rides, the riders," said Naruto. "Mayat Phao?" asked Jeff. "Forget I said anything," said Naruto in a flat tone. "What about your name, Senva?" asked Allison. "I want to hear Jeff completely butcher it too," she said with a snort. Senva sighed. "My clan name is Tuluk Mayat, which is Old Gallic for of the Snake clan." "Go ahead and say it, Jeff," said Allison with huge eyes. "This I've got to hear." Jeff said in a pouting tone, "I'm not even trying with that one." Naruto said, "On an unconnected note, I will be out this evening until after 9 so we can study in my room till about 6. "Is everything all right?" asked Senva. "A friend of mine has urgent news, so I am going to see her," explained Naruto. "I hope all is well," said the Vulcan girl. "As do I," the blonde replied gravely. Naruto's suite. "You have hardly any decorations at all, Naruto," said Allison with a sweat drop. "This room of yours is utterly boring. You don't even have any pictures." Naruto sighed. "We are here to study, not to critique my living space." "It is clean and efficient," commented Senva. "Everything seems to be in a logical order." The blonde nodded in appreciation. "Thank you." Jeff was looking at a small holographic projector on the nightstand beside Naruto's bed. "Wow, Naruto. Who is this total babe? She's hot. Is she your girlfriend?" Naruto's eyebrow twitched. "That would be my mother, Jeff. The projector scrolls through different members of my family." Allison exploded into laughter as Jeff blushed madly in embarrassment. The redhead got herself under control. She watched as the holographic projector scrolled through Sovar, Terra, Taylok, and then a picture of the whole family together, including Naruto. "Well, in Geoff's defense, Naruto's mom is smokin' hot." "Shut up, Allison," cried Jeff. "Let's just do our homework," said Senva. Naruto nodded and said, "I am in full agreement, Senva. Shikar District, To Lyra's house. Naruto quietly knocked on the door at Lyra's residence at 6:30 in the evening. To Lyra's mother Anuak answered the door and said, "Naruto, welcome. We've been waiting for you. There is much to be discussed." The blonde quietly entered and took off his sandals. "Thank you for inviting me into your home." To Lyra sounded stressed when she called, "So I came as soon as I could make arrangements." To Lyra came out of the back and said, "Naruto, I'm so glad you were here. Please join me in my room. I'll get us some tea." Naruto was soon sitting at a small table for tea that Lyra had in her room to entertain guests. He took a sip of tea and cringed slightly. Lyra's mother must have made this. The blue-wearing girl said, "My mother made the tea. I'm not sure what flavor it is." Lyra took a delicate sip and got an extremely sour look on her face. "Perhaps we should skip this tea. It seems quite unpalatable. I can't even tell what flavor it is." "Ah, that is an excellent idea," said Naruto. He looked at Lyra and saw how tired she looked. "Tell me what happened, Lyra. You seem very stressed." Lyra sighed. "Where do I start?" She pondered for a moment and said, "Arev is out of therapy and visited this morning. I'm afraid that he is damaged." "Damaged?" asked the blonde. "Do you mean in a physical or mental way?" The brown-haired girl said, "After 2 years of private therapy, Arev decided to embrace the path of emotionalism over logic." Naruto's blue eyes goggled. "What? But that's absurd. What do his parents think?" "His parents are very distraught and have all but disowned him," explained Lyra. "For obvious reasons, my engagement to him is broken off. He grew very angry when I declared this, and he threatened me. He said I belong to him, and when his Ponfar comes around he will seek me out whether I agree to it or not. I am very concerned he will carry out his threat, and he acts unstable and unbalanced. Everyone has urged him to go back into therapy for his own sake, but he is convinced that emotional control can only be accomplished by experiencing emotions. His display was vulgar and illogical. I don't know if his parents will be able to keep him, as he's already spoken of leading a nomadic life with others that reject Surik's teachings. His parents already indicated that they did not wish to let him influence his younger siblings." Naruto reached out and grasped Lyra's hands with his own larger ones. "I will protect you from him, Lyra. Arev will never touch you if I have a say in it." Lyra gently squeezed Naruto's hands. "Arev hates you and wants you dead, Naruto. He said so himself. He also hates Kesh, but not to the same extent. You must be cautious, Naruto. I do not want you to be hurt by him. Arev has become a monster. If Arev attacks me or anyone I care for, then I won't hold back," said Naruto in an iron tone. "You mean you would actually use your chakra?" asked Lyra. Naruto nodded. "If he tries to hurt you in any way, Lyra, I will put him down like the sick animal he is. I won't let him touch you." Vulcan Science Academy. Naruto got back to his suite at 9:30 and sat wondering what exactly happened to Arev. Lyra's parents explained to Naruto that the engagement was mutually broken between Arev and Lyra's parents, which put the blue-wearing girl in the position of being 13 and unbonded. Regardless of this fact, Arev had been completely enraged and apparently was dragged out of Lyra's house by his own very mortified father. "It isn't like Arev was ever any sort of friend to me," thought the blonde. "Other than taunting me from day one and attacking me, we are barely acquaintances. I saved his life and it made him mad. Perhaps he was damaged all along and rebelled completely during his therapy. How disturbing." Naruto showered and changed into his night clothes. He thought aloud, "If Arev tries to harm Lyra in any way, there will be no power in the world that can save him from me." Naruto slept uneasily that night, dreaming of assassination techniques from his ancestral memories. Whether he knew it or not, his dreams would prepare the blonde for anything. The end. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next part.